us that he loves to cook and he loves food.
I'm trying to kill it.
He just always had a high metabolism, but
And Chinese dogs.
the age, yeah, the older you get,
Guys, me too.
changes.
This is catching me too.
I can't escape.
Guys,
Ready?
I just think you could keep one.
We need every minute of this time.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our ESPLOST 5 and other long-range facility plans workshop. And I will turn this over to the superintendent.
Absolutely. We are excited to continue to engage around the topic of ESPLOST 5 and other long-range facility planning that we have embarked on this journey collectively as a team, as an extended cabinet. And today we are excited to bring you some additional thinking we have had, the evolution of some plans, and some updates. Our board members have in front of them a document that includes all of the projects that we are considering right now, but today we're only going to be highlighting a few of those projects. This is an effort from us, from the team, to bring a more complete plan together, which was one of the things that we heard you all say from our last ESPLOST workshop. On the screen in front of you, or if you're following along in your packet, you can see that today we really want to review some of the major themes from the previous workshop. We want to discuss the implications and the short and long-term path ahead as we think about what we learned from you all and the feedback that we gathered from you all from the last session. And of course, we want a workshop today, so providing lots of opportunity to solicit feedback and refine so that we can further refine our projects and programs. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper today into the revenue aspect so that you have an understanding of what we are projecting. And the reason why that is important is because currently, since we have been in blue sky mode and we've been in ideation mode, we have more projects than we have anticipated funding. So at some point in time, the board will have to think about what comes off the list and what will no longer be prioritized. So just know that your ticket out the door today as a board member is going to be, give us your top 5 preferred projects and your bottom 5 preferred projects so that we know kind of what's in the middle, what's high priority, and what may not be a priority to the board right now, because that guides us over the next few weeks as we continue to plan. So just wanted to highlight what the ticket out the door is. If you'll go to the next slide, I think it's important. We spent 2.5 hours together just a few weeks ago, and we heard a lot, and we have had an opportunity to sit down and unpack. I've watched that workshop a couple of times now and wanted to just repeat back to you what we heard from the board during our last time together. So the first thing we heard is that we can't decouple our long-range facilities plan from programming. They go together. Our academic programming and our ESPLOST long-range facilities plan, they coexist together. We heard from you all that there is a need, though, to examine our choice programs so that we can determine where we have disconnect and where we have overlap. And we heard from you all that the sequencing is important so that by the time a student arrives at, for example, a Johnson High School, they have the readiness to be able to participate in IB programs. That's just an example. We heard from the board that this just isn't about buildings. This is about how we fund our programs, how we staff our programs, and how students get transported to our programs. Access is important. We heard loud and clear from you all that our partners and universities are important as we continue this process, but we also need to make sure that we're clear about roles and responsibilities. The last 2 things that we heard loud and clear from you all is that we have to balance choice programs with making sure that every school in Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools is a high-quality learning experience. So whether you are in a choice program or a neighborhood school, we would be able to say to our community, this is the baseline experience every child is going to receive. Every child will receive the arts, every child will receive acceleration opportunities, but we want to define what that baseline experience is. And then what we've heard also is that we have to think about the unintended consequences of adding programs. We're in a district where, quite frankly, it was one of the things that lured me here. We have an exceptional choice program menu. And as a result of that, every school kind of has its thing. They just slap STEAM on the out front and they say, we have a STEAM program. But when we do that, we could be having some unintended consequences, like pulling students out of their home schools, which results in underutilization in other schools. Again, making sure that every community has a viable homeschool as a first option, that we have academic acceleration in all schools. We establish that identity that we're going to have for every Savannah-Chatham County Public School System school, and what does that baseline experience look like? So those are the things that we heard from you all. We also gave you some quizzes during that time together. We wanted to hear from you all. Where right now is your energy in terms of some of the themes that we presented to you all? And we heard loud and clear that the projects in West Chatham County were kind of a highlight for everyone. All the way down to expanding CTAE programming being kind of your last preferred topic to prioritize. And then here, we ask you all the question about criteria. So again, as we begin to prioritize these projects, what should we be considering as kind of the filter by which we prioritize? As you can see here, enrollment and building utilization was your top criteria, and the bottom criteria was don't worry about the money. The money's going to be fine, don't worry about it. But you also shared with us some other things like flexibility of a building so that we can respond both now and in the future. Community, school, and parent engagement was important. Demographic factors was also an important highlight. And then this ratio of facility inventory to need. We need to have the right number of schools to match the need. And right now, we actually have more facilities than we have designated. We have more square footage in our district than what the state would say is needed. So I wanted to, again, voice over what we heard to make sure we heard what we thought we heard, and ask you as you re-listen to yourselves through my voice, what still resonates with you the most and why, and what implications does this have as we move forward? So that's our first discussion for today.
Ms. Grabowski.
Well, I'll say just as you were going through, the one thing that really kind of stuck out to me when you're talking about the choice and the home neighborhood schools. And I know we had a lot of discussion around choice and specialty programs, and that's a really unique and successful part of our district. But to me, we need to prioritize all schools having that quality experience. Like, if we had to choose one or the other, making sure that all of our schools are meeting that is where I would place that at a higher priority.
Thank you.
Ms. Hall?
At our meeting this morning, Dr. Watts was speaking about the compensation study and how she plans to delve into what different schools look like, what the leadership pressures are, and that kind of thing, and that there might be some incentive for those schools that are burdened with heavy special ed programs or heavy poverty circumstances, that might, in fact, make decisions about compensation. Well, the end result of that might be that getting people who are extremely talented to leave their comfort zones and perhaps go to some of these more complex buildings would be very helpful. So I'm really excited about that idea as we look into this.
Mr. Johnson, then Dr. Hoskins Brown.
One of the things just in general that still it's kept with me is, the West Chatham, just the entire corridor, just knowing how it needs to be reworked, it needs to be, looked at better. But with that, I am glad that we're still talking about how are we going to use the buildings for the programs that are going to be in those buildings. Because you could build a beautiful building, but if it was built for a traditional classical education and you're trying to put in an art school, it's not going to work.
Right.
So we need to figure out what programs are going to go into a building before we build the building, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
So I really like that, and I think that has, whatever we decide as a board, through this workshop and all the board meetings, when it comes to the long-range facilities plan, that I know you're going to bring to us sooner rather than later, is all those things have to work together.
Yes.
And it's not always an easy conversation. It's not always a pleasant conversation. However, it's a long overdue needed conversation. So I just want, with that, I want to say I appreciate everything that you're doing and what the cabinet and staff is doing for this. And I am looking forward to seeing real concrete ideas of where y'all are right now, so we can put our input into it as well. So there can be a good plan, not only that works for our communities, but also makes sense for our communities.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. The poll results on the programming and facility topics didn't fall out exactly as I prioritized them for myself, and I'm okay with that. And I only want to comment on what came second, because it may be counterintuitive, but I wouldn't have put environmental, marine, and vet facilities as second, because it is such a narrow investment for the breadth of our whole system. And, if we put energy into early childhood centers, there'd be more little people ready for those careers and others.
Right.
So, and also, but if we do that, if that remains a priority for my colleagues, the things that marine and environmental scientists need, we're not really just organismal in the way that people look at it. People fall in love with all the charismatic megafauna, the turtles and the mammals and all those things. But we need programmers and modelers to help us predict what the size of populations are going to be.
Yes.
People who are in R, people who are using Python. We need engineers that are helping to design uncrewed systems so we can study places that are inhospitable for people to go. We need people who know how to extract and analyze environmental DNA. So if we are going in that direction, I hope we really will look at the jobs that are going to be available for young
We are.
people. And it's not doing what I do, which is going out in the mud, jump out the boat, and count stuff. That's really not how we're doing it anymore.
Yes.
On the criteria, I think that my thoughts are more aligned with the poll results, really looking at what our needs are and the enrollment in building. I think the facility condition is like a standing factor that we should always consider. It doesn't even have to be a priority because it's kind of a requisite.
Yes.
Yep. So I'm happy to see. So what resonates with me is really looking at addressing the needs in the West. That is just, it's been a need for a long time. We've not been able to keep up for reasons that are not our own fault.
Sure, absolutely.
But we do need to build the organizational stamina to try and meet that need, because the West deserves that investment. So to me, that's kind of where I'm still sitting, is how we're meeting the needs in the West, how we are developing our approach to enrollment and programs. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Pretty much the same thing, addressing the needs on the West. We know about the enrollment out there and also the future of Gould. We know what happened with the K-12 facility, and what's going on now. So there's concern with the future of school, politically, as well as what's literally going on in that area. Programmatic, of course, early childhood, that needs to be abroad. And another concern is we have buildings that are over the capacity, whereas others are under. So the balance of how we're going to mesh those two.
It's so important.
Yes.
Mr. Kachmar.
Thank you. I'll repeat what my fellow board member said. Our immediate need, West Chatham, number one. Number two, more strategic long-term, I think I'd like to reduce our square footage that we have to maintain and operate as much as possible without going overboard, and that's a trick. But the more we reduce our square footage that we're responsible for, the more money we'll have to pay more for teachers and to invest more in programming. So that seems to me like the foundational exercise.
Yes.
Let's understand what square footage we need to manage long-term, and that opens up the budget for everything else. Third, I want us to continue to be as flexible as possible in planning for the future like we did at the complex out in Garden City. Half of the renovations we're discussing now is because we converted a school from elementary to middle or middle to high, and we built as small and efficiently as possible for its intended purpose at the time. But if we built the high school standard everywhere, then it could be an elementary, a middle, or a high school no matter what, and we wouldn't have to spend $40 million to renovate, or whatever those rules are. So flexibility. And then part of the discussion, part of the tension we have is we want to offer everything to every kid in every school, but then we get spread thin and we don't do any of it well, or we only do some of it well in some locations. So really being thoughtful about what do we do well and not diluting that and creating more opportunities for more kids to participate. So whatever we do from a choice, from a subspecialty program, let's do it really well where we do it and not dilute it by trying to do it at every single school.
Absolutely.
Ms. Grabowski.
Well, I'll just, Pete, when Mr. Kretschmar was talking, listening to Freakonomics last night, and one of the people I had on was the founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And he was talking about when they started, they had this big truck. They could do lots of things, and so they started doing lots of things. They would transport soil, they would do this and they would do that, but it diluted their brand of who they were. And they said, you know what? This is how we started, and this is where we excel, and so that's where their focus is and remains, and that's how they became successful. So that just kind of popped in my mind when Mr. Kachmar was talking about the importance of maintaining that focus to maintain the strengths of our programs. And then also in thinking about the flexibility of our schools, I mean, I have certainly been one to say we do need to be thinking of what the program is of our schools, and we do, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that there are things that we are going to be expecting our schools and our students to do 10 years from now that don't even exist today.
Right.
So being mindful of what those future things are to come and designing with flexibility within the shell of the space, I think is really critical. And there are some, great construction technologies out there that allow you to do that with partition walls and things like that. So I hope that after we get through this big exercise, that we can maybe pick back up with our design guidelines discussion and
Yes.
start to talk about
That's
how some of that
happening
flexibility.
simultaneously,
Okay,
yes.
so how some of that flexibility can come into our design so that we are flexible, and forward-looking in that perspective as well.
Awesome.
Dr. Bringman.
It seems as everyone is speaking. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting because of my other job, but wanted to thank all of the board members for emphasizing the district as a whole over their elected district. I didn't hear any of that. It was all at 1.5 times speed. So much easier to watch it on YouTube at 1.5 times speed. If we could figure out how to do that in here, Todd, on the normal meetings, that'd be great. But everybody just spoke on how can we do everything for everyone. I hope that in the next, almost 100 pages, this is really tailoring in with the 3 phases of your plan. Echoing Mr. Kachmar's on what are we selling, square footage that we need to manage. All of those things came up, and just wanted to say thank you to all of you for really working for the whole.
Yes.
There wasn't any politics. It was nice because in other
Yes.
other silos of the city and county, except for me getting a pitch
for Windsor Forest Elementary,
Yeah, and I wasn't here, so I got somebody else to do it. You see, that's how a good politician does it. You get somebody else to say it on record. Just stating the obvious, making sure it was, because nobody else had any other comments about that. Talked about STEM for forever. But yeah, just thank you. I think this is going to be a great process. It's a hard process, and I think, do we even need to rank? I hope everybody ranks West Side. We could probably put that one, this is happening, and just tell us it's happening, and then we could rank our next 5 probably after that one project.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Anyone else? All right.
Let's keep it moving. Thank you all for that feedback and continued just affirmation of the process. I want to remind the public and remind ourselves that we're still kind of in ideation mode. There are some things that we know that have to happen. So you're going to hear about some projects today that there is not a wholesale, we're trying to sell something to you today. We're pitching an idea to see if we need to continue to ideate around that idea, or if there's no interest, then we abandon it and we don't waste time over the next few weeks continuing to research it. So I want people to know that, because I don't want anybody to look at this deck and think, oh, because they have this in a deck, this means that they're wed to the idea. We're trying to figure out where to put our time and attention over the next few weeks. So if you'll go on to the next few slides, I wanted to highlight just some challenges, and you all have alluded to many of them, so I don't need to spend a lot of time on these. We have, first of all, facility challenges. We know we have buildings that are in poor conditions. We know we need buildings that need modernization. We have buildings that we know that have safety or technology deficits. We need to include more amenities, such as outdoor learning classrooms in our schools. So just limited amenities. And to Mr. Cashmar's point, we've got too many facilities, so we need to make sure that ratio is captured. We also, as highlighted in the last meeting, we have academic programming challenges. We don't always have the greatest vertical articulation or alignment of a program. We have very high demand programs, and today you're going to learn about programs that are very low demand. And what do we do about that? Maybe that is we pick a few and we narrow down some choices. And then lastly, you'll see we obviously have enrollment and utilization challenges where we are growing very fast in the western part of our county. In other places, we are not. And so we've got to somehow reconcile those two things. So as we move forward, know that every project that we are bringing forth addresses as many of these as we possibly can. That was the goal. How can we come up with a project where we can check multiple boxes and not just deal with one box? Because one box will not get us the full resolution, and we'll find ourselves back in this place a year or 2 or 3 from now. So taking all of the concepts that you all shared with us, I'm not going to reread these to you because they've been captured already. Here are kind of our planning objectives. So as we meet as a team, we keep these in front of us, making sure that we are keeping our eyes focused on the key aims that we are moving towards as we look at long-term facilities planning. Dr. Hoskins-Brown, you are going to love this. This is right down your alley. This is actually hot off the press, and I wish we had more time to talk about this today, but Dr. Angie Lewis just exposed the team to this last Friday. This was actually hot off the press October 2024, so it's less than 30 days old. These are the new modernized national career clusters. So this defines a lot of the programs that Dr. Hoskins-Brown, when you look in the cluster, and if you'll kind of go to the next slide, there's a whole cluster around cultivating resources. There's a whole cluster that speaks to food and plant systems, water systems, agricultural technologies, and this is the future of what CTAE programs will be expected over the next iteration of work. The great thing about this is, as I have mentioned many times before, we are as a district advanced. We might not be calling the things, the programs in our district these names, but every place where you see a star, we already have either a very robust choice program that may just need to be tweaked, or we have the beginning of a program that maybe needs additional support. So we, I believe, are a little bit farther down the road in terms of choice programming and will not have as heavy as a lift as other districts have. But this document, and would love to send it to you all to look at, is really the future of what our CTAE programs should be looking like. In addition, in the green box, we have some things as a district that we are doing outside of those pathways, and that's the early childhood learning. You are not going to see that as a part of a CTAE program, because that's literally our 3- and 4-year-olds that we're serving. Alternative learning, we have CELA, obviously, is a program, and we also have International Baccalaureate, which is not captured in the modernized CTAE pathways. So I just wanted to highlight those.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown?
Thank you. And thank you for pointing out that particular area under cultivating resources. One of the things that I think in this realignment can help us with is align with the state's plan for economic development. So in the previous iteration of CTAE, commercial fishing was a pathway. And that's just not a growth area. People are not just chomping at the bit to get a shrimp boat and try and do that kind of work. But there is a lot of interest in aquaculture.
Yes.
Particularly in bivalve aquaculture. We only have 2 people growing oysters in the state. We only have 1 hatchery in the state. So it's a rich area for entrepreneurship. So a young person that's interested in going into a shellfish or a fishing background, using that as an example, would be more encouraged under agribusiness or one of those pathways than they would have been under commercial fishing. So I think the opportunity to share the expense of developing some of these pathways with industry and state partners is rich now that we're modernizing what these topics are.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right.
Okay, Ms. Hall?
This is amazing to look at, and I've always been a very strong supporter of Dr. Lewis, but this is really fantastic. My question, though, is when I was in school, you either were on an academic path going to a university, or you were engaged in what at that time basically was, I'm going school, let's say school to work.
Vocational.
Yeah, vocational. I'm wondering, looking at this buffet, is it not possible for us to create academic programs where students get to do both? I don't
Absolutely.
think we can have this kind of wonderful opportunity and it only be available to you if you're planning to.
Go to college.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Or if you're planning to go to college, that you don't have the opportunity to do some of these things.
Absolutely.
Besides the academia you need for college.
Absolutely.
So I found out 2 days ago that humans were once arthropods. I never knew that. I knew an arthropod is a crab, a shrimp, insects. I didn't know that we as humans evolved from if you go back millions of years. So that's because I was all in academia and not getting out in the marshes and finding out. So I just want us to try to make our experiences for our kids as rich as possible.
And please know, to my heart, I think one of the first things you all heard from me was a choice feel life, and that speaks directly to what you are saying.
Ms. Grabowski?
Well, and maybe this is overkill, but I am thrilled to death to see this framework. I mean, this is so exciting.
I've been so excited about it.
And to Ms. Hall's point, like, I would love for us to get away from this college, not college. Like, to me, that has never been healthy. Like, number one, why pigeonhole a K-12 student into, I mean, that just, so, and the opportunities here, like when I look at, you know, the ones, the construction one, we've got, now have added architecture and civil engineering, which is a college path to the construction, what is typically thought of as the skilled trades. And when you combine those two together and they learn from each other, the
It's
end
huge.
product is so much better. And we know that in the contracting world, that's the benefit of having our design build teams, right? Because you have the contractor working with the designer. So to be taking that and putting it into the academic setting, I'm sorry we haven't already been here, but I'm excited this is where we're going.
Yes, this is very exciting to me, too.
Okay, Dr. Howard Hall and then Mr. Johnson.
Yes, we have a very unique county. We really do. When I go to the Georgia School Board meetings, you know, every year, we're different from other counties. We are a port city. And it's good to know that we have a supply chain and transportation going on because we do a lot of building and moving right here in this city, as well as we are the city by the sea. So we have an advantage and an opportunity to learn more about marine science, although I don't care for the animals like, I'm afraid of the animals like, unlike Dr. Hoskins Brown, but not all counties have the advantage that we have. So it's good to see this is being revamped, and I'm looking forward to it.
Mr. Johnson?
I kind of want to piggyback on what Ms. Kowarski was saying with having things that are typically college degreed and typically not college degreed, but you also have things within them that you can do it with or without a college degree, like culinary and food services. You don't have to have a college degree to do that. But you can. You can go to college for it. You can go to a 4-year college. You can go to a 2-year college. And I think it's very important not to pigeonhole a child when they're not even thinking about college yet. They're just thinking about when's snack time.
Right, right.
I mean, so we really need to make sure that we are giving them those choices and those opportunities without pigeonholing or putting some sort of mark on a child saying, well, you're going to college, you're not going to college.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I'm going to disagree with Dr. Howard Hall. I like playing with the animals. I think turtles are awesome.
You all are not seeing a slide that I have shared with a few of our team, but I think everything that you are mentioning right now is really resonating with me, because foundational to all of this is literacy. And I don't want us to get so excited about this framework, right, that we forget that baseline experience is literacy, should be literacy, because it's going to set the path so that a child can choose college or career. You know, they can have that choice-filled life. And at the elementary school, we really should be building all of those foundational skills, not pigeonhole a student too early into a program, but exposing them to as many things, right, as we can potentially expose them to. Middle school, giving them a little bit of guided choice, because you're 12 and 13, I'm not sure you're ready to make a choice at that point. And then by the time a student gets to high school, they are ready for voice and choice. But how we stair-step kids into those experiences are important, and I am staying up day and night thinking about all of these things as we speak and engaging our team in the conversations as well. So thank you for affirming that, like, my brain space is being well spent right now. So you have a book of many projects today, but we are not going to go through every single project because there are a lot. Someone's already mentioned the number of slides. Today, we really want to focus our discussion on these particular projects. But again, you have access to all of the slides. And should we come across one that you want to focus on that's not mentioned here, we can certainly stop and have that discussion. So I wanted to just highlight that for everybody. These are the ones that we really need your feedback on today, but we are very open to conversations. Your booklet is organized by geographic region of Savannah. So we're starting at the far west, and as we go through the day, we will move ourselves all the way out to the islands Again, the starred components are ones in which we are going to highlight for discussion.
So good afternoon. We're going to start in Western Chatham County, as Madam Superintendent has mentioned. We are going to speak on the ones that are highlighted with stars. So our first project that we're going to talk about today is our new West Chatham County High School and K-8 facility. So the purpose and rationale, I think you all have basically covered it for me earlier, so thank you for setting the tone for me. But we've had rapid population growth in this area. We have to resolve the issue of overcrowding. We need to be innovative in our design and make sure that we are being flexible. We have workforce development opportunities in this area, and then we also must make sure that we engage our programming in the right way the first time. So, West Chatham County Multi-Complex, the high school and the K-8. The idea here is to utilize our current sites at the West Chatham County Middle School and Elementary School to build a K-8 and a high school. We have explored the opportunity of finding new land, and we struck out there. So this is where we are trying to maximize our own current space so we can move forward. We have over 100 acres between those two different sites that we could utilize. We also would like to start the design, assuming this is approved in the March referendum and approved by the board to move forward. The idea would be to start the design in late calendar year 2025. The construction would start in 2027 with the completion and opening in the 2029-2030 academic year. So that's a little bit of an escalated time frame, but that's just our estimate at this time. We are eager and we are trying to move forward on that project. The facility estimated cost is $82 million, and then the athletic complex, if we were to be able to add one to that area, is estimated at $35 million. So $55 million for the other piece.
There's a slide for questions right after this one.
Sorry. Okay. So again, the impact and benefits, it relieves the current and future projected facility utilization in that area, provides the students with high demand programming, expansion of programming options can increase, and our transportation efficiency hopefully we will be able to resolve some of those matters. And then by having the K-8 and the high school right there together and building the new school, and then having the vertical choice pathways for feeder schools, and then the feasibility of the on-site athletic complex additionally would provide more benefits.
Mr. Kachmar, then Dr. Hoskins-Brown, then Mr. Johnson.
On the timeline estimation, are we basing that based on personnel capacity or ESPLOST tax collections, or what is the timeline based on?
So once ESPLOST 5 gets approved, I'm going by how we are handling Windsor Forest High, be able to do it in that timeline. So I think it's very possible to get it done.
Okay. But are we basing that based on, do we have the people to manage the project, or on having available cash?
Both. I'll have both available at that time.
Okay. Because for ESPLOST 4, the board approved issuing bonds. And if we wanted to, we could issue bonds right away and immediately raise capital to get started earlier than 27, particularly the design process and all of that, which we don't need people for. We have to pay other people to do.
That's right.
But we'd have to validate tax collection revenues to make sure we're not floating bonds at a higher rate than we can repay. But that's what we did in E2 and E3, and we paid off, or E1 and E2, and we paid off the bonds in E3 and E4. So if we want to go quickly, we could do bonds right away.
Yes. Thank you for a great idea.
Dr. Hoskins Brown?
Can I ask Sean about what he just said?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Are you saying once we were assured of the passage of E5, we would float the bonds, or you're saying regardless?
Well, that's what I would definitely prefer, but I think we can do bonds whenever we want. Prudently, I would not support floating bonds for E5 until we know we could repay them
Yeah,
with
that's-
E5 tax revenues.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I just wanted,
Yeah.
thank you.
And our finance team, Mr. Jackson and Ms. Davidson, myself, and a few other members of our team have been engaged with a financial firm that has been educating us on the use of bonds. It was in reference to another project, but we are building our capacity so that we can understand exactly what you're talking about, Mr. Cashmore. And should we decide to use that on any of these projects, we have a partner that's already helping us think about that.
Dr. Hoskins Brown?
Thank you. I just, in looking at the dollar amount estimated for this high school, I was curious about what we'd spent on the Davis Edwards Harris complex. I know it won't be entirely comparable, well, sort of comparable because we scaled back, but just wondering if we have 120?
A lot more.
So, since this is only high school, I'm comparing it with Windsor Forest High. Yeah, DEH was a K to 12, so it was,
If you combine the two.
The K-8 and, if you combine the whole multi-complex, is it comparable? Not just one piece of it?
it is comparable.
Actually,
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, the complex was 135.
Yeah, the complex has been more.
So my goal has been accomplished. I just want us to be talking about these numbers and be ready for them to go up if they need to go up. I don't want to be hamstringed in a design like this, especially because of the enrollment pressure that we have in that part of the county. That's the wrong place to not build at the right scale.
Right.
Yeah, all three of these are 172. I thought Groves was less than that, more like the 135, 140 range. So this project does allow for some escalation and increases.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Johnson and I have something. Go ahead.
Real quick, I do want to make sure that people understand that if this goes through, if everything passes, which I hope it does, because it's much needed for West Chatham and the Pooler community, is that there will be new boundaries drawn. It will help alleviate some of the pressure from New Hampstead High School. It will help alleviate some of the pressure from Pooler Elementary. There's a lot of things that this will help with, not just providing two brand-new buildings.
Yes.
So it will help relieve pressure from other schools that need relief from overcrowding, and it'll give us as a district an opportunity to not just rezone with K through 8, but also the high schools. And I know we've just went through a process with West Chatham, with New Hampstead High School. However, I do believe that it's still necessary, it's still needed, and just talking to people in Pooler, they want that high school that they can call their own and wrap their arms around it.
Okay. Dr. Howard Hall?
I have a quick question about the West Chatham Elementary and Middle Schools. I know that right now there's two separate buildings. So just help me to understand consolidation and new build of a K-8 school. So what happens to those two buildings? Are we demolishing one, combining, or renaming, or building
So we would demolish one.
both, or one?
Both eventually would be demolished, but the plan would be demolish one, construct a building. So just say if we did a site plan and they decided that the K-8 would be best built at the elementary site right now, we would demolish the elementary school, build the K-8, and during that time, those students would have to swing to other schools. And then once that was done, then we would demolish the middle school and build the high school at that site.
Dr. Bremer?
We're pitching these together will the new high school fly, i.e. be built without a consolidation of West Chatham and West Middle? Or are these combined in this presentation because they have to all go?
Our conceptual thinking right now is that, again, we don't want to do something and then 3 to 5 years from now, do something else. So the pitch is for the multi-complex. So
So the pitch is all
is
of
the
this
whole
or
thing,
none of this?
yes. Because the other piece is West Chatham Elementary and Middle both need significant renovations.
What are their FCIs? Because all the other presentations give us an FCI, but these were neglected. I know they were in the last, the other presentation, but I didn't
Yep, we'll
write it
make
all
sure
down.
that we include those moving forward.
That's okay, yeah, I was just-
But they were supposed to get renovations, and
Okay.
so we thought,
I thought they were on the reno, yeah.
again, instead of putting money into a renovation, if we're going to designate money to renovate, we might as well do the whole rebuild.
And the thought process behind making a K-8 and a high school rather than one big building and having two, I'm talking to the, and having 2 cafeterias, 2 parking lots, 2 entries that have to be, what?
Get 2 cafeterias there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are some inherent
kitchen. It's a
challenges
shared.
with the way DEH is built. I know it looks to be ideal, but having students in that close of proximity to one another, 5-year-olds literally on the same site as 17 and 18-year-olds is a challenge, and to some extent, we're experiencing that. So it's the same concept, but I think we're looking at more space between our younger students and our older students so that they're not combined in one facility, so that we relieve some of the questions that people had about our youngest learners in the same building with our oldest learners. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it makes
This just
sense.
gives
It's a
us,
lot of
it's on
money.
the same site, but it just gives a little bit more space.
West Chatham Elementary School was 31.92, and West Chatham Middle School was 41.08. Both were in the pink to red area.
And those were built what year? Thank you.
Let's see, West Chatham Elementary was built in 1999, and West Chatham Middle School was built in 1998.
Thank you so much. But it is a all or nothing. Okay.
So this is exciting. One thing I want us to look at, and when we were going through our board discussions before, we talked about working with other partners. I've expressed before that I would love for the high school to be a STEAM high school, but I would also like for us to partner with the Georgia Tech in designing this. That's what they mean. They're in that business. So anytime we could have those kinds of partnerships, I strongly encourage them. So.
Absolutely. And the acronym STEAM, what we garnered from the team, from you all's feedback the last time, is that could be defined so many ways. And then the framework that I showed you all earlier about using more modernized language. So the reason why you don't see STEAM, you did see it the last time, but the reason why we took it off is because we're going to work to align our programming more with that framework, which would include an arts component.
Yeah, so, I guess my point was more of.
The partnership.
Let's look at partnerships.
Yep, absolutely.
Ms. Grabowski, then Dr. Brinkman.
On the partnership
sorry.
front, I see a note that for the athletic complex in partnership with the county. So
Exploration of.
I hope we will explore that in earnest. Would really love for this to be a shared partnership with the county. I think this is an ideal spot probably for them and for us, so glad to see that on there. The other thing is, and I mentioned this earlier, but we'll mention it again, I do have concerns about the lack of access and connectivity to this site. You got one way in and one way out. And with all schools on one campus, that is a challenge. So we need to be extremely proactive in planning now with the city of Pooler on how to address that.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you so much for the presentation thus far. Super, I would like to ask you this question based upon your recent comments concerning the K through 12 schools. Do you believe that that is a model that we should not pursue throughout the future? I'm sure we did our homework before we launched out on that project, but after doing the research at this point, do you feel that that is not something that's suitable for Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools, or?
No, so I want to be clear. I'm not evaluating whether it was a good or bad decision. I think our thinking is we're using the same concept as the DEH facility, but just separating students by more than just a wall or a door, but actually giving some physical space between the campuses. So it is still a multi-site complex, but we would have less opportunity for students from a elementary side to walk through a door and all of a sudden I'm in a high school environment, or walk through a door and I'm a middle school student and I'm now with a high school group of students. We are seeing some of that now and how that is playing out at the DEH campus. And so we just want to be mindful of that. But 100%, I think it's a good decision. We're just looking at creating a little more space. So it's not a matter of walking through a door and now you're in a different school.
Dr. Brinkman?
So after my initial comments of not being political, I will be political. Just throwing it out there that this will be a massive project. It will take up a substantial percentage of the overall ESPLOST, and it will all be in one area. And when we look back at the last vote for a SPLOST that was all large percentage to fix problems on the west side, that SPLOST failed. And it failed because the entire eastern portion of our county voted against all of their county money going to fix the infrastructure of the west side. I'm not saying that will happen, but I think we need to be cognizant of T-SPLOST failed because nobody else in the county wanted to vote to fix the infrastructure problems of the rampant growth on the west side. Just throwing it out there on that's my real quick look. So just be cognizant of that we know it's a problem. Just don't know if fixing everything at once is going to make it polarizing enough so that certain portions of our county won't want to vote for it to fix. And I could be completely wrong. I hope I am.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown?
Thank you, Dr. Brinkman. I think that's a valid point. I think, when you're trying to advance something across the whole county needs to see themselves on the ballot. So I think that's worth drawing attention to. I want to invite us to look at what all of our local universities can contribute to our STEAM effort. What used to be enforced as a non-compete clause in our university system resulted in colleges developing areas of expertise that were very specific. So Armstrong grew in its biomedical strength. Savannah State grew in its marine science, ecology, and engineering. We have SCAD as an incredible resource here. You also have South College, and we have, 5, I think, here. So I think there's an opportunity for all of those institutions to contribute their expertise. And I know that used to be part of our practice that we would sit down with the university presidents on an annual basis. I don't know if that's something that we've been doing lately. Yes, sort of yes and sort of no,
Ones that,
okay.
that will meet with me.
Okay.
And I've met with some, not all, but some.
Okay, I'd like to invite all of our local university presidents to accept an invitation from our school board chair and superintendent to pursue how we can best partner on these things. I find it surprising that everyone is not excited about an invitation to meet with you all. So I hope that,
There's also the question of permanence. So, I mean,
Oh.
we meet with a president this week and they're gone the next week, so.
okay. I think that the institutions have staying power and their strengths have staying power, even if our representatives may change over time. So I hope that we'll pursue that because we have the opportunity to really build stellar STEAM programming across the county.
Mr. Johnson?
I do know that this is for these West Chatham schools, it's a lot of money. And I know it'll be a big bulk of what ESPLOST 5 could potentially be. I also know there's projects because Mr. Hediger gave us kind of a spreadsheet of other projects that's across the county as well. And it's one of those things that we all know it's needed. And as long as we work together as a board and really lay it out how it all helps the entire county, then yes, it will. It shouldn't matter, but I know it can. The main thing is it's going to depend on programming. How that's going to help alleviate stress in other places. It's going to relieve stress at other schools. Be able to actually properly have, rezoning. So there are ways to go about it, but we need to make sure that. Yes, we need to make sure it passes, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we are actually servicing the communities we say we're going to service as well. And when it comes to this project, I would be willing to die on a hill for that. I know I'm not going to be here in January, but that means I actually have a little more leeway and a little more flexibility to be able to help out with E5. Exactly.
Ms. Hall and Mr. Katchmar.
Two things. I definitely feel, Mr. Johnson, that the fact that we have projects from Thunderbolt basically all the way to the west, that we should be able to go out and as ambassadors for the whole county. Our mobility rate, we're always talking about how high it is. So I might be at Johnson today, but I may be at Groves, the next semester. So I think we need to encourage our citizens to be as grand in their thinking as possible. But Dr. Watts, I don't want anybody to be panicking about what we were saying earlier. So I just want to mention that I'm sure the human dimension at Groves is working on doing anything that they need to do to help compensate for the proximity
We
of
are
the
putting
schools to each other.
additional resources that help with supervision and support there. Yes,
That's what
absolutely.
I was thinking. So nobody needs to panic about
No,
that.
no.
Mr. Katchmar.
Good point by Dr. Bringman, and I would say one massive project like that, or two at the most, is prudent, but if we only did two in one district, that might be more problematic. We did the DEH complex, and ESPLOST 4 passed at the highest rate since we started ESPLOST. If you look at the rest of the projects, they are spread around the district.
That was very intentional.
Yeah, and I think, but they're also tied to need as well. And I think the proposed estimated collections were like 660 or 650. So there'd still be 450 to 550 million in other funds for other projects as well. So I think there's enough to spread it around. But we just need to be mindful of not
Yes.
putting most of the projects in one area to the extent people do think that way.
Yes, it's definitely strategic. All right.
Okay.
Let's move on to Pooler, and let me just preface this one before Megan overviews. To me, this one is a little near and dear to my heart because it was deferred. It was supposed to be in ESPLOST 4. We did not deliver on it. So, you know, my integrity tells me when we make a promise, we should keep a promise. And in this case, we did not. So we have some work to do on this project. And from there, I'll let Ms. Davidson kind of guide you through the work that we need to do to make sure that we reconcile the lack of action from ESPLOST 4.
Absolutely, thank you. So Pooler Elementary was constructed in 1949. It's one of our oldest buildings in the district. It has an FCI score of 58. Remember, when it comes to FCI scores, it's like playing golf, so the lower the score, the better. It has an RSLI score, so of 22. So how much of that building life is left? So not very much. It has acreage of almost 6 acres. Its gross square foot is 47,000, and it has about enrollment of about 342. And over on the left, you can see, if you haven't been out there, it's a cute little school. Some of those opportunities that we need to work through, as Madam Superintendent mentioned, is it was in ESPLOST 4 referendum, but those renovations did not occur. It is an underutilized based on its enrollment, so it has low enrollment. It is landlocked. You wouldn't think that during the times that it rains. Sometimes it seems like in an island, but it is landlocked. And then it does have an adequate acreage, so when we go to renovate, if we choose to renovate, we'll have to work with a very smart architect to get us the ability to get approval from Georgia Department of Education to renovate on that space. The estimated cost for that renovation is about $9.6 million.
Will you let her finish?
Yeah, we got
There's-
questions and answers right after. One more slide.
We got one more slide.
I'll talk faster, I'm sorry. So we understand the opportunity here to engage our community, especially in the Pooler Elementary area. So we have put together 4 options. Option A, to put forth to the community, is to renovate the building as promised, to be transparent about our limitations of the renovation. There is only so much you can do with that building and that site. And the students would be swung to Bloomingdale during that renovation. Option B, the students would go to Bloomingdale during the renovation. Some might choose to stay. It's a brand-new facility. It's a beautiful space. Some might choose not to go back. In that option, students would be integrated into that new Bloomingdale Elementary School, and there is sufficient capacity for if they choose to stay. Option C is Pooler students could be divided between Bloomingdale and the new K-8 in West Chatham, if that is an approved project to go forward, depending on location and boundaries. And option D is other. So we do plan to move forward with community engagement, some different parents and staff meetings pending after this meeting today.
Okay, now, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. We just deallocated $36.9 million from E4, so why can't we use $9 million of that to still do Pooler Elementary with E4 money?
We could potentially do that. We'll have to speak to the finances, and I'll defer that to Sunny in just a moment. But the bigger piece that I wanted to make sure that the community understands is that you would only get us $9.6 million renovation, and you're going to have this shiny new Bloomingdale on one side of you and a shiny new K-8 on the other side of you, and you are simply getting a renovation. So before we move forward with a renovation, we want to be proactive in saying you could actually take another route here and choose a new building versus a renovated building. So that was kind of the thinking, that we needed to introduce the idea to the community before we just pull the trigger on a renovation.
Okay, so that, I guess, so that answers my question about what, why we have the alternatives, and they make sense. But why is it in the status
Deferred.
of not being done Like, why are we at the status
Yes,
of
I don't know
it
the
not
answer to
being
that.
done and deciding to do it?
So I looked at all the projects we promised in E4, and looking at the recent costs from Windsor Forest and Bloomingdale, everything, if I do, it'll require $560 million approximately, and we are capped at 410. So we have to make choices, not only because we decided to build a Bloomingdale, we made an addition to Pulaski, and also the rising costs.
Okay, so
And
that's,
also, when E4 was planned, or E3, they said that, okay, you have 3 million, do the renovation in this school, whatever you can do. But now we have changed our philosophy, take the school out, do everything which is needed. So that 3 million has become almost 10 million or more. Like for me, was originally assigned 4.6 million, but now the renovation we are doing is 14 million. So I have to rearrange funds. So everything promised in E4 cannot be done in 410.
okay, so that's helpful. So can I get that list, like the list of the things that we're not going to do? Because it's happened every ESPLOST, that something has happened and we've run out of money. But if I can get the we ran out of money list, that would help
Yes.
me not ask this question over and over again, because that's really where I'm getting to.
And you will see it in the deck. So and in the spreadsheet I sent last night, the projects that were deferred are being deferred. They were in 4, but now we're deferring them to 5. You should see a note that says that. It may not be in this deck, but I know we represented that yesterday in our documents.
Okay.
But we'll get it to you in a cleaner way so you can see it.
Okay, so
But this
unallocated.
isn't the only one. There's a couple of other ones that were deferred.
Yeah, at 150 million.
Yes.
I can imagine that's a handful. So we are using unallocated funds to fund projects that have overblown what we estimated for them in E4 in the first place?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the projects that are not being done, those are getting moved to E5?
Depending on the will of the board, yes.
And do we have accurate numbers for how far these projects will be overblown to know that the unallocated monies that we're moving will be sufficient to finish them? Or are we going to be adding incomplete projects to E5 too?
No. My intention is, the reason you saw all those moving to unallocated is that I want to make sure all the projects I do in E4 will be completed.
But you've utilized a vendor to help
Yes.
do projections of the actual expenses.
Okay,
So
so yes, we will have that. Okay, thank you both. I appreciate the answer.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Grabowski, Ms.
It was Mr. Smith.
I'm sorry.
It was Mr. Smith.
Okay.
Before she even started the slide, we good?
Okay.
That's why we need the
buzzer.
buttons. That's why
Okay.
we need the buttons that,
I'm going to go down the line. Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith, Dr. Bringman, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Grabowski, who else? Mr. Katchmar. Here we go.
Almost forgot what I wanted to say. But I thank you for this presentation on this school. So just out of curiosity, if I'm understanding this, I want to make sure we communicated correctly. This school that was built in 1949, that is underutilized, and that has issues when it rains, it seems like an island. Your words, not mine. Is we're trying to sow into that school $9.6 million.
potentially, that is an option.
That's an
So
option,
That's
right.
an option.
It's an option, okay. And,
because that's what we promised in E4.
In E4. And
Okay.
That's
I
what we
did-
said we were going to do in E4.
okay. Tell me this, if this question makes sense. If we sold $9.6 million into this campus, what would be the lifespan after?
It should be another 20 to 25 years. So when you rebuild a building, you should be able to get another 20 to 25 years in that.
But this isn't a
building.
rebuild, though. This is just a 9.6 renovation.
Oh, it's just a renovation, I'm sorry.
So
So,
this-
yeah, you're looking at between 10 and 15 years.
Max.
So does $10 million give us 10 years as that being good stewards of?
I will reserve my comment on that, but I think one of the discussions that the team and I had yesterday about another very old facility, when you are renovating something very old, it's not a one-time thing. You're going to do it, and then you're going to have to come back and do a little bit more, and then you're going to have to come back and do a little bit more, and you're going to have to come back and do a little bit more. And so again, that's why it's important that we tell the community, we're going to do 9.6, but this doesn't solve, this is not going to solve the building problem at Pooler. It is a old building.
It may get you some new HVAC, right? It may get you a new roof, but ultimately, I can't build that building up to the level it needs to be built up to solve the water challenges around the space. Or you can't get a whole new building and everything new on the site for $9.6 million.
So your line of questioning is very valid.
Okay.
Dr. Brinkman?
Thank you, Reverend. This is one of those times that I think having to defer because things got expensive works in our benefit. To be fiscally responsible, thank you, Mr. Smith. I feel like option C is the only option that I would be able to support to alleviate our West Chatham issues. That makes it a lot easier to pitch a rebuild, and because we're tearing down 25-year-old schools, where we're trying here in this proposal to put 10 million into a 60-plus-year-old school. So I feel like this is where we as appointed representatives have to be good with the money that we are asking the county to give us. Bloomingdale to Pooler is a 3.5-mile drive, and Pooler Elementary to West Chatham is, depending on your route, a 2.5 to 3.9. So you've got 3 campuses quite close, 2 of which, if this West Chatham big haul happens, are brand new. So I think it really makes sense to actually make money off of Pooler, because if we divest it, we can sell it and use that money to fund something else.
Mr. Johnson?
So, Pooler Elementary, back when we were talking about E4, we kind of had the same conversation, and the first iteration of it was that we were going to tear down Bloomingdale Elementary, tear down Pooler Elementary, build one school, and put them all in that school. At that time, I told them that I would not support that, just because I know how each community feels about their little school. Staff at that time did not get any feedback from the community or the schools or the families or anything else. That was their plan. It makes financial sense. However, when you go into these communities, these little schools are their little babies. Walking around, and I know Ms. Campbell as well, when she was walking around, you would meet someone in their 60s and they're saying, I went to Pooler Elementary, or I went to Bloomingdale Elementary. That's my school. My stance on it is we should not be making, yes, we have to make the ultimate decision of what option to do, but we need to know what the community in these areas feel. We need to know what the staff feels in these areas. We need to know what the families of these schools feel, because if we go against what they want to do, they're not going to vote for it. So we're talking about, we put too much in one area, then another area might not agree with it. Same thing going if you're taking away their baby. And I don't want to put I don't want to have the baby go down with the bathwater. So I think we need to be very careful and understand that doing town halls, whether they're virtual or in person, going to parent meetings, doing surveys, getting as much information before we as a board make a decision on whether we're going to close it, renovate it, split the kids up. I think that's the best route to go.
Okay, Mr. Cashmar, Ms. Hall, Dr. Hoskins Brown, you have any, Ms. Grabowski? Okay.
2 quick comments. One, like, let's go through everything before you get a definitive answer from me on a particular project. Because I agree with everything that's been said, and there's been diametrically opposed statements. The other thing, though, I want us to think about how we talk about what we did and didn't do in previous ESPLOST, because I disagree a little bit that we made this promise to Pooler and we didn't follow through. In my mind, what's happened in every ESPLOST is we plan for it, and then we plan for it 2 or 3 years before ESPLOST starts, and then we get to year 4 of that SPLOST. So our planning from 5, 6, 7 years ago has evolved. And so oftentimes, like, I remember discussions over the last 2 or 3 years where inflationary costs have come up and we start talking about project costs, and then we started talking about West Side. You know, we didn't know Hyundai was coming 3 years ago or 4 years ago, right? We didn't know there'd be a huge population shift. So part of our discussions at previous board meetings and retreats was, let's rethink what we had planned for West Side 4 or 5 years ago. And every ESPLOST, we defer some projects because we're planning something different now. What we plan, like May Howard, ESPLOST 1, May Howard was supposed to get a new wing. That got canceled because we built a new school in ESPLOST 2. The original plan for Beach in E1 morphed many times because of need, and the original plan for Groves, it's supposed to be a new Groves and a new Mercer. That morphed into something else as our thinking evolved. So I don't really see it as we're not following through. Our thinking about how we can meet our long-term goals with Pooler in the context of Bloomingdale and Rice Creek and New Hampstead has morphed. So we are planning on doing something for that community on a more macro sense.
But the context changed.
And if we keep saying as a board, we failed to follow through on our promises last time, that's going to be the headline in the paper and on TV. Board concedes failure to follow through on promises, you know. So please don't do that, because every single project in ESPLOST has been analyzed over the last 5 years, and it's more of a, we think we're going to do something different on the west side. Let's defer this while we need another $100 million to finish Windsor Forest or whatever it is.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think the people in Pooler may feel different because what you just said has not been stated more explicitly throughout. As time has evolved, what you just said maybe has not been explicitly stated. So they may feel that way, not understanding what you just said, because you illuminated it for me, so I appreciate that. Yes.
Okay, Ms. Hall?
Basically, just to add on to that, I was sitting here, I said, we went through this, and we had decided that that would be a great idea to have one school, instead of having a Pooler Elementary and a Bloomingdale, to have one. And it fell flat. I recall that. But our thinking has evolved, and times have evolved, and we don't need to apologize because our thinking became more clear about something as circumstances changed. And that's what I think happened in this situation, so that we may find in going out to the community and talking with people that they see that the circumstances are so different now that we need to move in this direction.
I'm glad you all are mentioning that, because we just need to make that a part of the narrative moving forward.
Yes, okay.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown?
Thank you. I just wanted to contribute to what Mr. Johnson was saying about community engagement and consider how we're going to do that. Because the folks who are paying attention to this issue right now may not necessarily be the folks who are going to have children in the school that we're building. And one of the challenges that we faced with Hodge was everybody was okay with closing Hodge until like 3 years later when it was time to close Hodge. And then it was a big issue, and the folks who had decided it was a good idea were not the folks who had young people at the school. So I think that there is definitely a value to community feedback and engagement on these processes, but we also have to be thoughtful and consistent with how we do it. so that as the idea around the project matures, we still have the attention of the individuals that are going to be affected. And if we do it well, we'll have the attention of the individuals who are expectant stakeholders, the ones who are not there yet, but who are going to be impacted when whatever change we do is made.
Makes a lot of sense.
Ms. Grabowski?
Just quickly going back to the last time before when Dr. Hoskins Brown was talking about the unallocated E4 money. To me, and I know there are many projects in here that are included on E4. To me, like, unless something radical has changed, like, those should be an automatic on E5. Like, we've already made that community commitment to those projects. I'm not saying our thinking can't evolve, but I would really struggle with if we didn't carry an ESPLOST 4, Project 4, because of lack of funding. If we didn't carry that forward to East 5, I would really struggle with that. I'm getting funny looks. Does that make sense? Huh?
Everything has always changed.
No, everything is always, I know, but if we have projects that we were not able to fulfill on E4 because we didn't have enough financial capacity to do it, I don't think that unless, the need is still there, so we need to address the need. Maybe the way we address the need evolves, and I think that's what we're talking about with Pooler, but I just want us to be cognizant of making sure that we maintain that commitment that was made in E4 as we move forward into E5.
You want an automatic rollover for consideration.
I think that
in the
needs to be
list.
important in the
That's the
consideration of
grappling.
compiling the list.
That's
of
the
what was-
grappling that I'm having with everything that has already been said. Our thinking did evolve, so does that mean we're still committed?
And maybe maybe it's a more granular conversation project by project, but I just think that needs to be a part of the analysis. If there's a project that was on E4 that didn't get done because of funding, like, to me, that's an important consideration for carrying it forward to E5.
Okay, I've got to do Dr. Howard Hall, Mr. Kachmar, Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Yes, I won't be long. I attended Tompkins Elementary. A lot of you probably said Tompkins Elementary. Yes, there used to be a Tompkins Elementary, but time evolved, and now those students are attending Brock. Now, we know the situation with the Gould, and that's coming up next. I don't want to prolong the time because this sounds like it's the West Side Saga, the West Side Story Saga. There's a lot going on the West Side, but time involves and people evolve. And we know that the difference between Gould and Pooler is that the Gould students were to be divided among 3 schools, whereas Pooler, regarding option B, they will all remain together to enroll in the K-8 school. Am I right? Is that the other option? But they're right there with with the radius of the miles. But I do think we should have, input from the community. However, when you look at the overall situation that's going on, we want to be fair. We want to give everybody the opportunity to have.
Gotta make sense.
Yes, got to make sense because we do want SPLOST to pass.
Mr. Kachmar.
So are we the Sharks or the Jets over here? Sorry. Bad joke. Just to Ms. Grabowski's point, one of the things I think that I'm very proud of with ESPLOST that separates us from other SPLOSTs is every ESPLOST we have followed through on every commitment. But the way we've explained it is we either did the project we said we were going to do, or we did something different to address the underlying issue that led to us wanting to do that project. And then to capitalize on what you were saying earlier, we've communicated that to the community. So I'd go to a PTA meeting at May Howard and say, I got great news, we're canceling the wing. And everybody's like, what? And I'm like, because they want to build a new school.
Right.
And they're like, oh, okay, we're good. So I 100% agree with every underlying issue that's in E4 that we're not addressing in E4, we need to address in E5, whether it's the same project that we designed 5 years ago or different, we need to communicate to the community, here's how we're addressing it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. That helped me synthesize.
Right.
That.
Yeah, that trust is like we gotta demonstrate and communicate that, yeah.
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Yeah, I was just going to say what he said. It's just
Okay.
to roll over the need,
Yes.
not necessarily the project.
Yes.
And I assumed that was happening, so I appreciate you saying
Yes.
that explicitly. Whatever the need was that
Still
didn't
has to
get
be
met,
addressed.
that gets rolled over to a list of priorities, and then we figure out how it gets executed and then communicated clearly.
Yes. All right, we are going to move forward.
I mean, granted, it is the biggest issue, so like
It is, and you will notice though, however, you will notice that the way your booklet is set up, it is set up by geographic area. There are other areas of the city that we have to address. Mr. Batra is going to cover, we only highlighted one project to cover here because we felt like we had talked about the other ones, but Dr. Howard Hall has mentioned she'd like to have a review of Gould as well. So we will do Rice Creek K-8, which we think will be easy and quick, and then we will touch bases on Gould. So, Mr. Batra.
So Rice Creek, we know that we have more students coming in there, and we have the capacity. In fact, I got a call from Dr. Troy Brown saying that, can you put some portables there for next year? So instead of putting portables, if you remember Godley Station, we just added 24 classrooms. I intend to do the same thing. When Rice Creek K-8 was designed, it had the extra facilities like the gym, the cafeteria were designed for a higher number than we have there. So we can easily add to each wing, just like we did that Godley Station, to give them another 400 student population. And the cost will be 20 million. We just did that for the same cost at Godley, slightly less than that, so this will work for us. Any questions?
Dr. Hoskins Brown, Dr. Howard Hall.
That's just for the addition to meet capacity.
Yes.
Is there any thought to putting some funds there for some aesthetic enhancements or other?
So we did aesthetically enhance Godley Station, and that will also happen here too.
Okay, what,
We put playgrounds, artificial turf, things like that.
okay, thank you.
Dr. Howard Hall.
And I'd just like to reiterate that it originally started out as a 3rd through 8th grade
Yes.
school. So after the closing of Port Wentworth K-2, we did some reorganization. So now it's a K-8 school, and which really, is now over capacity. So that's good to know that we're adding on, and just hopefully that it's still growing. They're still building apartment complexes out there. I live directly across from Rice Creek School. So even with this, I see the growth continuing, but right now, that's another time, I guess, to discuss that. But I think that it's well needed. We've been asking about it for several years, so that's good to hear.
So let's move on to Gould.
Gould.
Who's talking about?
Gould.
Good. This school, we had that meeting, we decided to keep this school with us. It's not part of DEH, but it is also built in 1956. FCI is high. Enrollment is growing. So we do intend to do a renovation. I'm already doing the roof because it was in a bad condition. So the new roof is going in E4. And we want to do the rest of the modernization and do a new HVAC and all the other things needed for Gould. They did get a new furniture because we bought it for them, part of DEH. So we moved the new furniture to them. And it does need more enhancements.
I do think it's important to note that Gould is another one of those landlocked schools that has challenges with the state in terms of being able to expand beyond what it already is.
Yes.
Because it's landlocked. The acreage does not meet the state requirement.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Even if you build up,
So-
because with, Gadsden and you see schools that are landlocked.
So building up will require for me to demolish and build a brand-new school. because you have to have the right foundation for a two-story building than a one-story building.
I'm familiar with that. That's why I mentioned that going up, because it's not impossible. We hear that, oh, it's landlocked, so you can't build, and you can if you go up.
Yes.
Not recommending it, I'm just throwing it out
Right.
there.
And as a reminder, the purpose of DEH was for them to have a new school, but
That's right.
it changed, our priorities changed. So they were supposed to be in a new school, but decided they wanted to remain at Gould.
Dr. Ringerman?
And I'll probably get emails from those people because that was one of the first times we really worked together at Mole Auditorium when I knew you were the right superintendent.
Thank you.
Because you listened. Those faculty and those parents said, we want our school and we don't care what it looks like. We want our school however it is. We don't want to move to a new school. So while we decided to keep that community together because it serves a special population, we were going to kind of change the promise that was made that they would all move to DEH. It's hard for me on the fiscally responsible side to fix a problem that we created to acquiesce to people who said they were okay with the problem. So while I am good with the roof, because we can't let the building go worse, I'm good with HVAC because we can't have people working in an area like that, and other safety measures, all great, but actually spending tons and tons of money to try to make it look better when there are other schools that might be on the list that look worse, that weren't given the opportunity to go to a new school, don't have an opportunity to go to a new school. We created this problem to appease a population, and I think it was a great move. I do. I think it was the right move. We had new people come in, we reevaluated, and the super asked the right questions. Why the heck are we going to drive these people all over the place to put all of them at this one spot? Made sense. But it's hard to chase that one decision that made everybody happy with money right away to bring it up. So it won't be as high on my list for that reason.
Ms. Hall?
This is a circumstance where I feel I'm leading with my heart more than my head. But I feel that that special population we're talking about has all kinds of concerns to deal with. And if keeping their home school in that little hamlet over there is going to provide a sense of community and nurturing for them, I'm for it. And like I said, it would be hard for me, like you said, David, to fiscally defend myself as easily as I feel I usually can. I would just think it's the right thing to do. So it has my vote.
Dr. Howard Hall?
The original concern was that the entire Gould was going to be placed at the entire body. That was the original plan, and I think if we had kept that plan, we wouldn't have this problem. But since we couldn't, due to population growth, we had to make some other decisions, and it's not their fault. And they just want to remain together. Now, they can, but they shouldn't be. We shouldn't sacrifice them in conditions of a building, because where you said you wanted to be together, you didn't care about the conditions of the building. I think that some work needs to be done there, and we need to just keep our word and do it.
Awesome, thank you. We will move to our next geographic area of the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System, and that is our south-southwest area. And that includes renovations to what actually includes projects for the elementary and middle schools at the southwest location. So, Mr. Batra?
So we also plan to do Southwest Elementary School and Southwest Middle School renovations, which they need because of high FCI scores. As you can see, Southwest Elementary has 33.32, it's in pink. And Southwest Middle has 46.14. Southwest Middle was part of E4, but since they're right next to each other, I intend to create a small portable unit which would house one wing of a school, so both can be renovated at the same time. So they need roofs and HVAC, and the total cost will be 19.3 for Southwest and slightly less for elementary school.
Dr. Brinkman?
Thank you. I know it needs to be done because it's all just really on the maintenance side of the house. For people new to Chatham County, seeing the age on these schools, you're like, my goodness, we're dumping, again, it hurts to dump money into something that's like 25 years old. These were the end of our bonded schools before ESPLOST took off. So these were definitely, who is the lowest bidder? What is the cheapest we can build? And it has, they have cost us money in the long run because we went with the cheapest. So I'm glad that the district doesn't do that anymore because of ESPLOST, that we actually can build buildings that don't fall apart almost immediately. Some of these roofs, within the first 5 to 10 years, I think the district was already dumping money into them. So I'm glad that we aren't going with lowest bidders anymore and just trying to build just to Georgia specs and things like that. So thank you.
I think it's important to note that while we're not going to talk about Windsor Forest Elementary, it was a deferred project from 4 to 5, as well as the middle school. So this may be an opportunity for us to employ the concept that we discussed earlier, where our thinking could evolve now, and we could think of maybe a different way. So I'm glad that we've had that full conversation today, because these were deferred. So we need to do something. The approach may be different now.
Mr. Johnson?
I know we also didn't talk about Georgetown K-8, but when we are going through the process of designing and bidding and everything, can we get a new sign for there?
That's going to be the first thing we do.
Okay.
If I have to go out there and build it.
Okay, I just wanted to, because it still says elementary, and it's been a
So-
K-8 for a while.
So it is in design right now. Actually, it's in bid right now. Next week, the bid closes, and the sign is included in that.
Okay, awesome. That includes that geographic area. We will now move to the next geographic area of town, and we have a few projects to talk about here. Some of them are combination projects. So the first one that I'd like to highlight is the STEM Academy at Bartlett. As you can see, this one is a facility built in 1962, high FCI score, ending life cycle. I should also note that this was a deferred project, so it was supposed to be in 4. It is now being deferred to 5. We had some additional evaluation of that site, and in 4, it was supposed to be a renovation. With that additional evaluation that we had done, the recommendation is to make it a new build. In addition to that, if you all will remember from our last board workshop conversation, there was conversations about relocation of this particular site. So the team and I have spent some time grappling with, does it stay in the same location that it's in now, or is there an opportunity to move the site to maybe maximize the benefit of what this school can provide to our community? So the big highlight that we would like to have your feedback on is the relocation aspect of this proposal, which is on the slide that you see now. As you all know, we just closed the Schumann Los. We just made a proposal, and you all approved closure of the Schumann site. That site sits on about 20 acres of land. The idea here is that we would relocate the STEM Academy at Bartlett to that site, which would give it more acreage. And in doing that, there would be a few potential benefits. More property, so we could actually expand the STEM Academy at Bartlett to a 612. Currently, those students are only attending a 6-8, and then they clamor for seats at a few other schools. So this provides the opportunity for these students to stay together. We have the land capacity to do it at the Schumann site. We could move, this also removes the current site, which is more commercial, to a more, a site that is more surrounded by homes and a little bit potentially safer for students and more efficient in terms of transportation. And this, again, provides a potential for a high school continuation, which would take some of the demand off of Savannah Arts, Woodville, and Jenkins, and could potentially bring families back who have left. They attend STEM. When they get to the 8th grade, they then decide to leave the district because they don't get into one of these specialty programs. It might inspire having those families remain with us in the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System. So that is the recommendation, and we would love to get your feedback on that particular project.
All right. I'm going to start with who I knew was going to have their hand up. Ms. Grabowski.
So I need to think about this one a lot. I'm curious, I guess the 6 through 12, we think that site is big enough for 6 through 12 and everything that comes with a high school? All the additional student parking, the athletic facilities, I mean, it seemed like an to middle school, yes. But to go through high school on that size of a site seems tight.
So I don't know that the site would offer a full athletic complex, because currently if those students are going to Woodville or Savannah Arts, they're not getting a full athletic complex. So we believe in our initial assessments that it could accommodate a 6 through 12, but it would not be a comprehensive high school like a Jenkins, for example.
Well, and that's okay. And I think, but I think that is something that needs a whole lot more thought.
Sure,
because like Savannah Arts, they have an extremely competitive track program, but they have to go to Jenkins to practice, or to Savannah
So does
High to
Woodville.
practice,
Yes,
or
so
to
does
Woodville.
Woodville.
And Woodville has to do the same. So let's not create more challenges for our student athletes, especially when they get to high school and might be looking for scholarship opportunities. So that's one kind of thing that pops to mind. I still think there's value in the central location of STEM. I know it's, 8 miles from the current location, but it does push it further east. No secret that east-west connectivity through the middle of Savannah has been a perpetual challenge and continues to be. So, I think that if it were just if it were just the middle school, that site could, and I also think that we're not utilizing all the property that we have right now at the current STEM location. We have additional property that's not being utilized. I recognize its challenges, but those are just some of my kind of initial thoughts, and I will definitely continue to ponder much, much more and let you know what other thoughts I have.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. I like the creativity of the 6 through 12 model. The main concern I have with the proposal is that we just told the Schumann community that you had to leave this building and leave this location, and then we would be building something new in that location, and I don't love that. I know part of the challenge is the condition of the building, but the other part of the challenge is movement out of that part of the city and just the amount of enrollment for a neighborhood school in a neighborhood where you have Schumann, Hubert, A.B. Williams, Savannah Classical. You just have this high density of educational options in a part of the community where young people in that age group aren't there in the numbers to support that number of schools in close proximity. So I get the numbers of it. It seems, and I'm intrigued by the idea of a 6 through 12. I'm not convinced about that site because it still has some of the limitation. It's still small and it's still locked in on one side by city property, on another side by a golf course, on the other side by a residential area. So I'm a little concerned about the messaging of redeveloping that for choice when we just removed neighborhood families. But if you didn't say Schumann site, I would have been like, oh, this sounds really, really cool. You know, all the other parts of it sound really interesting, and I'm interested in seeing it evolve. I think it does address, and I hear you nodding, but I don't like the current location either. So I'm still open for option 3, like, you know, bachelor number 3. What's that going to be for the location of Bartlett STEM? So please do continue to
Yes.
turn this over.
Ms. Hall?
I'm pondering.
Okay. All right. While you ponder, Mr. Johnson, then Dr. Bringman, Dr. Howard Hall, Ms. Smith? Okay.
I like the thinking, outside of the box thinking. I do have concerns with a 612 because for the same reasons we mentioned earlier with the mega site in Garden City. I completely understand where Dr. Hoskins Brown's coming from about this site. I think maybe finding a different site, doing that or seeing if, because I'm not sold on a site. I mean, if we can make it work at the current site, great. If we go to a different site and sell that site, great. I'm not sold on a site, but I'm also not sold on having having it attached as a middle school and a high school because of the concerns that you mentioned earlier. But I do like not the traditional thinking. I do like the idea of having somewhere for those kids to naturally go. And if other students decide to go somewhere else, like a Jenkins or a Beach or a Savannah Arts or wherever within the district, that's great too. But I'm not sold on putting them together in the same building. Maybe having if we had enough space to put them on separate buildings on the same campus, like we're talking about in West Chatham, I'd be fine with that. But I do know combining grade bands does save money. I just worry about, I have those same concerns with this as I'm having over in Garden City.
Fair. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Bringman?
I was 100% sold because as a parent, you get into STEM, you're in, done, don't have to think about high school, you're good, you're getting all the things you want. You've got teachers you're going to see in 6th grade, you're going to see them again in 10th grade, all of that I think flows perfectly. I don't know if we need, I'm sure somebody that's smarter than me knows we need the high school capacity maybe here or there or what the pipeline would look like. But then Dr. Hoskins Brown had to be brilliant and pitch the whole entire lens of Schumann, and I was like, oh, dang, yeah. So I like the concept from sitting up here, but also from like a parent who I knew my child wanted to do the E in STEM, like forever. That would just make it so much easier. And I truly believe you are not just pitching the idea of keeping students. That I think the students that come to us for STEM and then leave would stay. Or a good, I think more than we think would stay because they're done, they're in, it's the same cohort, let's just, can we have an island that floats above Chatham County that we build schools on and an elevator?
I'll work on it.
Sure.
Dr. Howard Hall?
I'm sitting here pondering, and I think about the neighborhood and the community. When I think about Woodville neighborhood, and you have Woodville, Tompkins there, and students that live right next door to the school being bused to Groves or to Beach or wherever. So my heart just goes out to the students in that community who will not be able to attend that school because now it's a STEM school. And then I also think about the proximity between that school and Savannah High, walking distance right there. So it's just something to think about.
Sure.
Making it a
All
6,
fair.
12, two
All
high
very
schools
fair.
that close in proximity, so.
Very fair.
Mr. Catchmeyer, then Ms. Hall.
Maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought last meeting we talked about doing something maybe with Johnson and STEM. And I was just sitting here thinking, Johnson is the Atom Smashers. Maybe we have the first nuclear reactor in a high school in the United States there. Well, and
That
it's a,
proposal's coming next.
okay, well, it's a little flippant, but my underlying reason for saying that is one of my underlying principles too is I don't want us to buy new land. We
Right.
have so much
That's
existing
what I'm
land
trying
and
to
existing
avoid.
facilities. So if we can avoid that, and some of the proposals in here say find new land for this, find new land for that, but more than 50% of our buildings are underutilized.
Yes.
So, and Johnson was one of the ones we
Yes.
discussed last
Yep,
time.
absolutely.
Ms. Hall?
Okay, my pondering is this. Imagine lots of the kids from A.B. Williams leaving 5th grade and going to STEM over at the Schumann site. I love the idea of that. And it's in our capacity. It's not as though it would be it would just happen by mistake. We could make it happen the way Mr. Butler and Academic Affairs plans and tailors our academic programs.
The alignment.
The alignment could easily work. So the idea of those kids going back to their home turf, but as STEM students at a choice school, because we've prepared them to be ready for that choice school, it sounds good to me. I just have to talk to my colleague here some more.
And
since
some of those
that would
students
be
would
added
be
burden to
Schumann
her.
students. Because
Huh?
and some of those students would be Schumann students because some of the students,
That's
Yes.
right. That's exactly right.
yes. So that's a good point.
Anyone else? So I was reading an article about a month ago. It was an article about the lack of African-American males going to HBCUs. But there was a part of that article that really spoke to me, and it talked about the decision gap. And the decision gap is the decision that teachers made about those males. And I want us to make sure that we're not making the same decision, and I'm agreeing with you, Ms. Hall, about our kids in that neighborhood. If our kids are taught the same way, our kids could qualify to get into a STEM. And I think that's what we want to move toward. It goes back to what Dr. Watts said at the beginning of our meeting. We need to have a basic level of education that all of our kids receive. All of our kids receive. And if part of that is finding that spark, and that spark exists in kids at A.B. Williams, it exists in kids at Hodge, it exists in kids at Durin, it exists in also. There are kids in those schools that gravitate toward math, gravitate toward science. If we can grab them, prepare them, and then put a STEM school in that neighborhood, I think that's powerful.
Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate both the things to consider in terms of unintended consequences as well as the benefits. That gives us a good segue to highlight the conversation that we've had around Johnson and Myers. And I kind of want to start off with a discovery that we have been looking at through the data. So with these particular schools, both Johnson and Myers, you are looking at some common challenges: underutilization, projected and future under enrollment that we are anticipating. We have an international baccalaureate program at Johnson that is not fully maximized. And as we discussed in our last meeting, it could potentially be a lack of readiness for our students once they arrive at the 9th grade. Are they really ready to take on the rigor of an IB program? So that led me to our choice programming data. And if you kind of follow the orange, there's not a lot to follow, which is an important discovery to make here. We have the feeder schools that lead into Johnson being Hurd, Juliet Low, Isle of Hope, and Myers. Those are the feeder schools. The International Baccalaureate program only exists at Johnson, and the feeder schools do not have any programming that would prepare our students or expose our students to IB. So again, they're arriving at the 9th grade, and for many of them, they're hearing IB for the very first time, which presents itself as a challenge. And you can see that challenge represented in the data in the orange box to the right of your screen. Johnson was able to offer 125 seats for IB programming, and they only seated 29 students. And so that is a significant underutilization of that program. And this is a program that there is quite a bit of funding that goes into making it work. So when we talk about the ROI conversation, this is one that we definitely have to think about. So the potential solution here is to focus on promoting that IB track or continuum to Myers, and even as we consider Juliet Low and Hurd, making sure that there is a continuum or there is an alignment. We have also talked about the fact, and Mr. Muhammad has been so wonderful to learn from, that we often speak about IB as if it is one concept. There is a diploma track, and there is also a career track. The diploma track is a very rigorous track, and we do not have a lot of students nationally that are able to complete that track, but there is also a career track. So when we started really playing with that idea and going back to that career framework that you all saw earlier, thinking about that in concert with its proximity to Savannah State University, its proximity to the Wilmington River and other waterways, we thought, is there an opportunity here to think about the IB career track and combining that with programming such as marine transportation, plant and animal systems and water systems, and conservation and land management, which are programs that are not fully actualized in our district, so it would be a new opportunity. But looking at marrying those concepts with the IB career track and really looking at that alignment K-12. So want to pause and consider that option or opportunity for just a second. I would love to get your feedback. Very complex because we're looking at underutilization, we're looking at programming, we're looking at geographic location, and we're trying to put all of those things together.
Ms. Grabowski, Ms. Hall, Dr. Brinkman.
So I love this idea. I see Isle of Hope K-8. I didn't hear you mention it, but I assume you're including Isle of Hope
Yes, yes.
K-8. So I definitely love the idea of recognizing the proximity. And one of the things I have said many, many times is I believe that we have a missed opportunity, that we are not fulfilling really the understanding of our sense of place with many of our students in living in a coastal environment that is experiencing sea level rise, is experiencing sunny day flooding. My undergraduate degree is environmental science, so this definitely speaks to my heart, and I would love for us to be able to look at, and I think at the elementary level, the opportunities to get our kids out and exploring and just really fostering that love, and then showing them the multitude of ways that it could be, expanded into a career. I think it's fantastic, and I love the idea.
discussion.
I'm thrilled to see Isle of Hope on here. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most beautiful parts of our county. The waterway, the marshes, that would fit right into the Savannah State and, Myers-Johnson area in terms of proximity to that. Dr. Hoskins-Brown, I kind of want to hear what you have to say. I'll wait till later to hear from you, but it sounds like we're getting ready to put you to work for the rest of your life. But Isle of Hope had so many challenges that we weren't aware of. I was not aware of until recently. So I think this would just be a wonderful aspiration for that school if we could make this work.
Dr. Brinkman?
First, an academic house, maybe clarification. I don't want to misquote anybody from this land of CTAE. Are those 29 seated students that actually went through the choice lottery and then were seated? Because I know we have other students that are Johnson districted students in IB that would not be in that seated, correct?
Yes, so.
Okay. I don't want the district, I don't want people looking at this saying that we only have 29. Those are seated outside of district students. So there are Johnson districted students in the IB program above that 29.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I thought that was the fact. I just wanted to make sure that was, yeah.
Yes.
I fully support pushing IB. We have not done a great job getting people to fully understand it to begin with. And I think there are a lot of students that are missing out on the rigor of IB because they just think that they're supposed to go to one of the other choice programs. So some more thoughtful feeder. I could definitely snowball down the hill with Kachmar on how do we get STEM maybe and a couple projects together so that we're using money even more fiscally responsible, but then also really meeting the mission vision on the academic side of the house. I mean, that's a win-win for everybody. And bolstering a program that needs to be bolstered. It cannot, I will die on that hill as a board member if we don't have an IB program in our district. Like, I will. So, yeah, keep spitballing district staff, because I think there are ways that we could couple some things here, sell property to make a lot of us happy so that we aren't having to manage all of it and meet, I think, a lot of mission.
Dr. Howard Hall, Mr. Johnson, then Howard Hall. Yes, Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, I like the idea, and I sit here and I think about teacher shortage, and I think about teacher recruitment, and I think about the budget. So what does that look like? Because there's going to be IB has extensive training with training those teachers. I know that Hurd is Hurd a STEAM school certified?
It is.
So
yes.
so some of those students will work well going to if we do a 612 STEM, if that plan goes through.
Yes.
But I know Isle of Hope, Myers, and Juliet Lowe, they don't have any programs there, and that would be awesome. But I know it's going to take, a budget and teacher recruitment.
Mr. Johnson?
I think that this is once again, outside of the box thinking. I also hope that when we're looking at some of these programs, not only talking to the folks over at Savannah State, but also maybe, especially like if we do something like this with Marine Life, talk to Tima as well, because they're the school on the beach, so they
visited there this week.
Well, good. I think that using some of what they know that works, and taking those ideas, and this is what charter schools are supposed to do. Use, those incubators, and we take the good ideas and start using them in our schools to help get everybody up. I like the idea of actually having it where a kid in kindergarten is able to go out and have the experience, so once they get to that point, they can make their own choice instead of what we were saying earlier, people already kind of designating them how they're going to go. And little kids, it doesn't matter, they like, as Dr. Hoskins Brown, they like, jumping out of the boat in the mud and touching animals.
Yes, they do. They love it.
Okay. Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. I like a lot of things about this proposal. I really love seeing the aspirational connection between Isle of Hope and Myers and Low, and I agree that TEMA needs to be at the table with its maritime connection. I think we're talking about place-based learning. Susie King Taylor needs to be at the table because we're talking some about that. I love the use of Johnson's campus. It's an ample, spacious campus. I had a bunch of thoughts. Let's see. So it seems like it also can connect to some of the plans for Oatland that we've not heard yet.
Yes.
The expanded education there, because if this is successful in the way that if that is successful in the way that we think it can be, it'll be more than enough students to feed programs at Johnson and at Islands. So I think that's some good connectivity. It's International Baccalaureate. I'm going to always advocate for bringing in my alma mater, Savannah State University, but it's International Baccalaureate, and SCAD is an international school. So there are to be enhanced language opportunities to address that true international nature, and other partners that can help with diplomacy. I think another partner that ought to be at the table is the Ports Authority. If we're talking about maritime development, and we're using maritime and marine interchangeably, and they're not. So if we're going to really embrace maritime, we need to bring in those maritime partners. And I think it's cool we're bringing marine science back to Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt Elementary had a marine science theme. And no longer, but now we're talking about it at Johnson. I think we also need coding and some other strong theme related to the use of technology to address environmental and conservation-related questions. So just to make sure that students are coming out with the highest level of training in the use of technology and innovation to be scientists. So I like it a lot. I still think that it's in play relative to what we're talking about in Schumann and what is needed to bring more resources to Myers. So I think there still can be some shifting in how we do things, but I really like all of the components of this.
Won't go through these numbers again, but again, these are renovations that we need to do, we have to do. The point of introducing the concept around programming, again, if we're going to go in and spend $11 million at Myers, and I forget how much the Johnson project is, we need to be taking into consideration how $27 million. We need to be thinking about the programming that should be a part of some of these renovations. So you can see the data. This is certainly a data-based decision-making process, but the programming piece is also an important aspect of it.
Mr. Ketchmar.
Sorry, real quick on Johnson.
Yes.
Please don't forget the athletic piece of all of that. It's not mentioned here, but some of their facilities need some attention too, I think.
Thank you for highlighting that. Okay, thank you for highlighting that. All right, couple of more to discuss. This is, again, another thing that we have just not thrown an idea, because I should not use that language. We have been intentional about solving for as many problems and capitalizing on as many opportunities as we can with each of these. Again, but this is an idea. I don't want anybody to think that this is the plan. This is not the plan. This is a place to get reaction. So Duran Middle School is, in this case, the idea is to make a recommendation around renovation and a consolidation with Hodge and a conversion to a K-8. Duran is a school that we would have to do some renovations in anyway because of its FCI score as well as its service life index. And it's also underutilized. So it is a building built for, I believe, 850, and so that means right now we're just looking at it being about half full. If you'll go to the next slide, again, at least $10.1 million of work that we have to do because it is an aging facility, it has worn interior, the energy efficiency is not good at the building. If you'll go to the next slide, we've got Hodge, whose life cycle is better. The FCI score is actually good. So we actually might need to be thinking about this in the opposite direction. But let me continue on. Hodge needs less. I think this might be missing a slide here.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm like, uh-oh, where did it go? That's okay. We can talk through it.
So the concept here, is it in our book? Is it totally missing from the deck? Okay, so let me try to talk through the concept from memory.
There you go.
It's in here.
There should be,
It's further down.
okay, can you tell us the slide number? Nope, not that one.
Oh, there's another one, yeah. Next, after that page,
Yeah, you go after that one.
Go
After
next.
that
after that one, 71.
one. 71.
I know it's not this one.
Click one more, next one.
Keep working on it.
Oh, actually, stay right here for a second. Stay right here. So when we look at Duran and Hodge, you can see here that in addition to being underutilized and Duran definitely needing some renovation, we also have an issue with choice program demand. So the Duran, which feeds into Beach, and Hodge, which feeds into Beach, both have health programs, so that's a plus. We do have a health program in place. However, the demand for these programs have been low. Duran Middle School had the capacity this year to seat 75 new students. It only seated 5. And Hodge had the capacity to seat 30 students, and it only seated 17. That may be illuminating a demand or a low demand that you also see at Beach. Beach is not considered for ESPLOST, but it had the capacity to seat 35 students and only seated 13. So we have the alignment there, but what this tells me is there is a need to better support these programs so that by the time the students arrive at Beach, they have the exposure and the readiness for us to fill that program, because it's an excellent program. So the concept that we are considering here, because we have underutilized facilities, low enrollment, low program demand, schools, Duran and Hodge being in very close proximity on the same plot of land, would be this opportunity to move Hodge into Duran, making it a K-8. We have no inner city K-8 schools. We have reserved that, for whatever reason, to the suburbs of Savannah. Okay, so we did at one time, but we do not now. And as we know, when we look at performance, our K-8 schools tend to perform better than our traditional middle schools. So it makes me think, why aren't we capitalizing on a K-8 environment in some of our lower performing schools? So this particular project would look at combining Duran and Hodge, making it a K-8 school, turning Hodge into a early childhood workforce child care support facility. So offering our employees a opportunity to take their children, their young children, for early childhood care at a reduced cost. And on that same plot of land, also consider workforce housing. So if you can conceptualize for just a second in your brains, one site being a K-8 school, the other site being an early childhood center for our workforce, And also looking at putting workforce housing in and around that area, it creates almost a village concept that would provide our employees with a lot of different options. It could be a recruitment and a retention incentive. It could also maximize Duran Middle School and making it a K-8, lessen that transition that students have to have from Hodge and then K-5 and then moving into a traditional middle school site. So there are a lot of different pieces to this particular recommendation or concept, and we would love to get your thoughts around it.
Okay, Ms. Hall?
Dr. Watts, in terms of the workforce housing, are you saying the 52nd Street corridor, that's where this housing would?
Potentially, we would really, this is an idea conceptually, we would have to get a developer to help us figure out what this would look like. So I don't want to commit to any street.
I would like the frontage to be like this.
Right, because we need
Okay.
additional experts at the table to help with this. But this
Okay.
is something that I've heard the board say that they're very interested in, and so it's top of mind. How can we fit this into our plan?
Okay. Well,
Fit this into our plan.
okay. Well, the changing Hodge Elementary to a preschool, pre-K center, fabulous. Wherever we can get them, good. And the K-8, Durin, I think that's a great idea. I do. I'd like to defer to Mr. Smith, of course, but and getting the programming there, again.
Yes.
We can't have the kids ready to want to be nurses and surgeons and cardiologists if they've never heard of that until they get to 9th grade. So getting the program ready while they're at that pre-K across the street.
So I'm going to go to Mr. Smith because this is your district.
I absolutely love this idea. As my colleagues have said, I would not die on the hill for it, but I believe this is an amazing asset, and it will bring great value to our district as well as the 5th district itself. I would love to see how the end picture looks because these are goals and these are needs that can be met and that should be met. So I would love to see how the end goal looks once we get with our developers to see the fine detail and the fine print. In the beginning, my concern was going to be centered around how could we I want to say close Hodge with it being such a nice school and such a new school. But as we talked more and found out what that plan was for that campus, I think it's a marvelous idea. And I'm excited about what we're going to do in the 5th district, the best district. We're flourishing. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Howard Hall, Mr. Johnson, and then come back down.
What stands out to me most is teacher recruitment. The impact that this will have on our employees having childcare. The impact that it would have on the community with the work-based housing. We've been talking about that for years. So I love this idea, I really do. And just like Reverend Smith said, I'm not willing to die on a hill because somebody already did that on Calvary Hill, on the hill far away, on a rugged cross. However, this is a wonderful idea, and I love it.
Mr. Johnson.
I love the idea of this. It's not buying any more land. It's repurposing our facilities, hopefully for better use, better utilization. However, like what Reverend Smith said, the devil's in the details.
Yes.
Being in real estate, I know that's where deals can be lost or won. So I would be very interested to see what the workforce housing details would look like. I know that's a ways down the road, getting with the developer, how that would work. My only concern about that is us getting into the property, any sort of property management issues. But I do think that if structured properly, it could help relieve some of affordable housing issues that we do have with some of our employees.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go down here now. Ms. Hall, sorry. Ms. Grabowski, Dr. Hoskins-Brown. You have anything, Sean?
By the time we get there.
You will by the time they finish. Go ahead.
Okay, all of the above, yes, great, love the plan. 2 quick questions. So to your point earlier, Dr. Watts, you talked about, when there are little babies, knowing, keeping the field wide open for them. I'm curious, and I can learn more about this later, how the health magnet works at elementary school. That seems awfully early to be thinking that's specific for our elementary students. So maybe that's why we don't have a higher number
I'm
there?
not sure that's the current programming, but I do believe that at elementary, it should be more exploratory.
Yeah, so maybe that's, anyways. And then, so we've talked about several K-8 conversions, and I think that's good. I think one thing that I want us to look at, though, is we have had people leave a K-8 school at middle school because they don't feel like their kids are getting prepared enough for the middle to high school transition. So I want us to be mindful of that, and I think it'd be helpful to look at the data of how many students that we do lose after 5th grade that don't want to stay in a K-8 school because of concerns of being prepared for high school.
Thank you.
So I absolutely love the combination of the K-8 Early Childhood Center and housing. I think it's representative of the kind of boldness that our district is known for, the fact that we will innovate something. So I love that part, and I love the way that it represents the level of thinking that we can do in our district. I like the purpose and the rationale and benefits, as a package, but I think part of the numbers that we see with the movement in the health program is that if you're interested in health or any sort of science in the district, you're probably already going to Bartlett STEM, which is why you're not seeing the numbers at Durin and then not seeing the numbers at Beach. So if you have a STEM 6 through 12, how are you going to feed this program?
Yep.
And I don't think the numbers in the program have anything to do with the quality of the program,
Could be.
other than the fact that we're poaching that talent and going to other programs, and they don't stay here. So that's something I think that needs to be fixed. It is a topical need. It's a workforce need in our region, but we're double dipping in our population. So we have to figure out, let the doctor tell us how to do it.
You were the doctor.
So if we could fix that, I think
Yes.
that would be great.
Thank you.
Ms. Hall?
Maybe we're not thinking wide enough in terms of program when we're talking about health-related. Home health care for the elderly. That's not being a doctor or RN, but my goodness, as the population, the longevity increases, that kind of thing is what's going to be on hand. So I'm thinking maybe we can just think more widely so that we don't cannibalize our other programs, and we could make this work. And Mr. Johnson, what you see is happening here, or I don't know if it was you or Dr. Brinkman who mentioned it, this is a buffet for everybody in this district. Anybody who thinks we were just, thinking about the West Side can see now that we're talking about, Tybee to Rice Creek.
Mr. Kashmar?
You already said yes.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Dr. Brinkman and then Ms. Grabowski.
I'm a yes on the proposal, but on the bigger picture of we're thank you for the paths and the schools that lead to them. And really, again, it's not just us going, hey, let's spend some money on some buildings. Like, so much intentionality, more than I think we've gotten before. I'm not going to go back and watch those videos on 1.5. So y'all are digging deep and giving us a huge list, which is lovely. We can't make it all. We don't have the magic wand. I don't know if I like the word cannibalizing. I think, again, it's one of the bigger issues of our district is getting the community to stop using the same, oh, well, that's the school you go to. It's just, it's that pervasive message of, well, if you want to go to the good school, you go to that school. And if you want to go to the good school, you go to that school. And why would you send your kid to Beach High so that they could be a doctor? Like, why would you do that? That's ridiculous. Why would you let your student go to that school? They can only go to this high school, or they can only go to that middle school. And those conversations still happen
Yeah.
all over the district.
It's one of the greatest misperceptions.
It is.
Thank you.
Beach
Preach.
High
Or just all of it.
produces amazing medical field
I mean, we can,
students.
because if you give me something, I read ahead. That's my problem. I was not aware at how grossly underseated the programs at Islands are. And they're great, all of them are great programs. And I don't know how we change the community understanding, because I feel like we do a lot. Come to this expo, go to that expo. Schools have open houses for this. Call a board member. Because the bioresearch and that vet science, those are not simple programs. Beach High, oh, let me just be a phlebotomist the day after I graduate because I've already gotten that certification. Like, I don't know how to get individuals to first of all, know that they can apply to them. But then when they have that whole like egg in, I'm gonna put all my eggs in one basket. I gotta go to Savannah Arts. If I don't get into Savannah Arts, forget. I'm not even gonna go to school anymore. I don't know, it's not that bad. But like how we grab that student and that family and go, are you looking for academic rigor? Because here are the 5 other schools that have seats that are also choice programs that have just as much academic rigor. Are you looking for medical? What were you wanting to get out of that rather than just the name of the school and the perception that has just pervaded since crud, I was in high school. So I'm not going to solve that today, but there's me doctoring on you, Dr. Hoskins Brown. But we've got to fix that problem as well, because we have all of the tracks. I mean, Dr. Lewis loves to say, we got them all. I don't know if there's another district that has all, 18 now? Pathways or however many it is. I'm sure it sounds like y'all are changing up what they're going to be called. But getting the community to understand the bioresearch program at Islands is going to give you the same opportunity to apply to Georgia Tech and get into Georgia Tech as a Jenkins. But everybody thinks they need to go to Jenkins. Oh, wait a second. A former principal at Savannah Arts said you better go to Savannah Arts if you want to go to Georgia Tech, not Jenkins. I mean, that issue, like, no, we've got these places. It's not just a one and done. So getting families to understand that. So there you go. There you go, Dr. Butler. You got it? Yeah, there you go. Academics, call Dr. Lewis and say, fix this problem. I'm messing with you.
I know that Mr. Smith had something else to say, and then I'll get to you guys.
Two quick questions on this.
I will. Okay.
And can I just say one thing? We probably have about 30 more minutes of content that I really need to get you all's feedback on. So we could continue for another 30 minutes, or we can
We got all day.
schedule another workshop.
Now
We working. We shot all day.
let's go.
No, I don't want you to be quiet. This is extremely helpful. But 3:30 was the end time, so I'm trying to just be respectful for people who have additional things. We're not doing all that, though. But you guys are good with
Yes.
moving forward?
Let's move
Okay,
on.
all right.
Quick question, after seeing this wonderful presentation on this particular school, I would like to ask the question, have we spoken with any of our school principals about this?
So we're good, that's at the end of the presentation. Today was just, again, getting you all's initial feedback, because there would be no need to speak to the principals if we had shown up with this today and you all said no. this is not an option. So the very next action step we are taking, starting tomorrow, in fact, for the next 3 days, is engaging our principals and then town hall community meetings, municipality leaders and partners. But again, getting your feedback was the first domino for me, because I didn't want to bring this to a principal and then get in this setting and you all say dead on arrival.
Sounds good. I don't want to veer off too far, but I do want to kind of add a little weight to Dr. Hoskins Brown's comment. As we look at the idea of a low population or low enrollment in these medical programs, have we talked about or have we discovered a way to beef it up or to add more to it? Is that a discussion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a discussion as recent as yesterday, as we had a budget presentation by our chief financial officer. We have a generous fund balance. We have options with millage rate. We just have to have a compelling case to sell to the community.
Gotcha.
And that is what this is about. I am, as you all probably have figured out, extremely ambitious, which means I can push harder and faster sometimes than people are ready to go. I think I said that in my interview, in all fairness, that I have, the gas pedal is always on really fast and hard with me, which can be a good thing, but I also know can be a detriment. So there is an opportunity. I forget even where I was going with this. What was the question you're asking?
I'm
That's
not
how
sure.
fast I go.
I just wanted to make sure. We're in works of beefing that up, beefing the medical programs for enrollment purposes.
Yes, so we have to think about the resource allocation to our programs, the return on investment, where we can get the additional money, the staffing piece, the transportation piece. All of this is all wrapped up in this, and we are having those conversations
That's it. Thank you.
simultaneously.
Okay. Ms. Grabowski?
Just
Coming.
quickly, going back to Ms. Hall's point and to Dr. Bringman's point, tying together, and I don't know if it was intentional that the shading on your chart was blue, but if we go back to our beautiful new presentation of this, caring for communities does both of what y'all are talking about,
Yes.
because it broadens the umbrella of what we're looking at,
When you talk
and it
about
also blends that technical versus college track. And I
Yes.
think that's one of the challenges that we face when we have programs where you can come out with a certification. It's like, oh, I got a certification, I don't have to go to college. And that perception, I think, is part of what traps us. But if we can take this approach and say, it's kind of blend that line, I think that can be helpful.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Howard Hall.
I appreciate the numbers of like how many seats and stuff, but that are allotted and how many are actually filled. Do we have the numbers of what it was before we stopped transporting choice programs?
No, but we could look at getting it.
Okay, because if the numbers are similar, then
There, it is a programmatic, but it could be a transportation
it could be a
piece.
transportation.
I get where you're going.
Yeah. All right, thank
I
you.
got it.
Okay, Dr. Howard Hall.
This won't be long, and I always say this. We often talk about, the wait list at Savannah Arts and Woodville Tompkins, but as I repeatedly say, Chatham County has more private schools than any district in Georgia, at least 35 plus. So we just have to continue to get the communication out to let the community know the great things that go on here with our public schools.
We've had a really great video done about Beach High School and the health program. If you haven't seen that on our social media site, we'd love for you to go click on it. It's really an excellent video. Yes.
Let's keep building some.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyone else? And we're going to move on. Go ahead.
Yeah. Is it possible, Dr. Watts, for you to just do the narrative without our comments and so we get through the whole narrative today, and then we can talk?
Really up to you all.
I think that would, because
Yes.
there's a lot of important stuff still coming
Yes,
in.
I got 2 more big ones, and then we got to talk
Yeah.
about the money.
Is that okay with everybody, that we just be quiet until they finish the narrative?
Good luck.
Okay. All right, we'll see.
Look at Cabinet laughing at us.
Like we
Just outwardly chortly.
Yeah, we
quiet.
can't do that, but we're gonna try so that we can get through the whole thing, I hope.
I'm taking bets now.
2 more projects to get through.
Here we go.
Okay, next.
All you.
We ready? All right, let's go to our East Savannah area, and we're going to talk about liberal arts Savannah High School renovations combined with our early college program. If you'll go back to the previous slide. Wow, look at that beautiful facility that we have there. Liberal Studies at Savannah High School is a beautiful, beautiful building. It has its challenges. However, it was a building built in 1998. Its FCI score is pretty high. It's at a 40. Its life cycle is, I think it's the lower you get, the better. It's 1/3 of its life is over. It's got plenty of acreage, and it is an under-enrolled school. So it's built for how many students? 1,500?
850.
850?
But this includes an early college student.
So if we look at the whole building, it's built for more than 850, right? So it's an under-enrolled, undersubscribed school. Similarly, at the early college, you have a school that we have taken a portion of Savannah High School, we have divided it up, and we have students at the early college. It is also an underutilized program, and that facility in totality is not being maximized to its full benefit. We have significant work that needs to be done on the entire campus with an aging infrastructure, again, a high FCI score, and much, much need to modernize in addition to the program issues. So at a minimum, we would need to spend $17.2 million just to do HVAC, just to do some basic modernization, just to do some interior and furnishing upgrades. So we began to think about how can we truly maximize this space. As you all know, there has been a conversation happening about a central office location. We are referring to this as an instructional support and administrative support services unit, i.e. district office. And the concept is in front of you. So it is looking at that total campus, the liberal studies and the Savannah High School, as well as the early college, and building integrated into that could potentially be our district office building. We could move the early college program campus onto a college campus, which would differentiate it from early college opportunities at every high school in the district, in that the early college program would actually exist on a college campus, which could help strengthen a partnership, and it could also promote enrollment. We looked at 2 examples of what a facility could look like. One example I'm sharing with you in the pictures. Cobb County has a school, Cobb Innovation and Technology Academy. Incorporated into that building design is the central office space. It would be a shared space, very similar to what you see in the pictures that will be on the next slides. The benefits of this would be it could increase our ratio of building, our ratio to need. If we looked at this being a potential site for our central office space, we have to remove people from 208 Bull Street anyway. This could be a potential site for that. It would also elevate the profile of Savannah High School, having the central office site on the campus. And lastly, it would maximize the use of that space. So instead of it being under-enrolled, we could use every square inch of that space. Again, this is just a proposal. This does not mean we are doing this. It just means we want your feedback so that we know how to advance moving forward. So I will pause there for your feedback and questions.
Yeah, well.
That is the go on.
I think we need to talk about this.
Yes, I think we got to talk about this.
I think we definitely have
Yes.
to talk about this. Okay, so I'm just going to go around.
Well, this is my district.
Okay, well, we'll start with Ms. Hall.
If all of you were listening carefully, she said this would raise the profile of Savannah High, and that's what I've been hoping for and eager to do since I came on the board. I think because of events that have happened, that it has been to the detriment of the spirit and mission of that school. And I think bringing the administrative services over from 208 while renovations take place at 208, I think for whatever year or two, whatever, that would go so far in helping us to uplift the spirit of Savannah High and the morale of the community there. And I also think having early college go on to Savannah State campus would make them unique as opposed to all the other dual enrollment programs that are proliferating across the county. So I applaud whoever thought of this, and I hope my colleagues will support it.
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. I like the thought behind this process. It's a beautiful, verdant campus that I think is obviously underutilized. I love the idea of being better stewards of taxpayer money by using the real estate that we have really effectively. I think it's still centrally located. It's located close enough to the center of power downtown such that we don't lose that connectivity. I think the details, I think the campus is so versatile, and that the young people there are sufficiently hungry and interested in new things that can augment their education, that it's a great opportunity. I'm thinking about the gardens that are there. I mean, there's just so much that can be done that connects to what we are amplifying in the district. That I think is a good idea, and I'd like to hear more creative things about what we can build on that's going well.
Ms. Grabowski.
Just, can I ask a clarifying question on the administrative? Because I heard Ms. Hall say temporary while 208's renovated, but I think you mean this is this intended as a temporary or permanent administrative
This
complex?
is just an initial pitch. We have to have a 208 Bull Street conversation. I already know what you're going to say. I already know what you're going to say. But here's the thing. We've got to get it out of 208 Bull Street anyway, regardless
Right,
of what
no,
the
I
208.
understand.
So this could be a potential swing space. But again, it's an opportunity to think
Okay.
larger.
So it's a to be determined if
It
it's
is a to be
temporary or
determined. I
permanent.
just wanted to
Okay.
get your thoughts about this initial concept right now.
Thank you.
That means you get
Go,
to
Dr.
say the
Howard
most
Hall.
important thing right at the end.
Go, Dr. Howard Hall.
Same question, is this a temporary central office location? Is a swing site? And what goes on with 208 Bull Street?
Yes.
Because from the looks of it, it doesn't look like it's
I knew that was-
temporary. It looks like it's a permanent.
Absolutely.
Because when you say the Cobb Innovation and Technology Academy and the central office, and we've already outlined what has already taken place at Cobb. So I just see it as trying not to move back into renovate and move back into the central office on 208. Looks like, I'm just putting it out there.
Yes, it's not the intent for this to be, this is the final idea. The intent was just to get you all's initial thoughts and reactions. We still have a bigger conversation to be had.
Mr. Johnson.
We'll be here till midnight.
I'm just going to say, whether it's temporary, swing, permanent, I love the idea of utilizing the facility. I know everybody around this horseshoe and knows where I stand about 208. However, I think that we need to do something with the Savannah High campus. There is a lot more parking there than there is at 208. You don't have to worry about paying a meter if you're coming to visit. And it's it actually is, it's a great location. It makes it easy for central office staff to be able to go catch a football game on a Friday night because they got the stadium right there. So I just, and it's, I mean, and it is a facility, it's a wonderful building, and we need to figure out a way to maximize that building, because it is great. And I know that the Savannah High community does not want to see that school not be there, because it's a part of the rich history, not only of the community, but of the city and the county as a whole. With the years and years of athletic competition and rivalries, and just the name of Savannah High. I mean, people, I bumped into a Savannah High graduate the last time I was in Atlanta, because he was making fun of me for my BC shirt that I was wearing. So I think whatever we can do to utilize the space to best suit the district's needs is a win.
Dr. Bringman?
Yes, Mr. Moss. Great pitch, great photo choice on whoever made this slide, because I truly, you look at this picture and you get the feel of you're walking into that you know what you were doing. Good. It looks like an admin building already almost from the front. It's got the pillars, it's got the feel, it's got the location. Man, y'all were thinking. So I supported everything a couple workshops ago out of Georgia Tech. So this works. It saves money, back to fiscally responsible. So run with it.
Where's Mr. Smith?
Well, he had to take a call, I believe.
Okay, Mr. Kachmar? And then I have.
I already know what he's going to say.
Kachmar.
Brilliant thinking.
But, go ahead with the but.
No, I like the idea. We're not spending 40 or 50 million on building a 40,000 square foot office building at East Broad or For Me, which was the original discussion. I want to see this in the context of everything. Notably, 208's not in this packet. So, but I like the idea. It's creative use of. It's a creative way to address many different issues.
Mr. Smith?
We're talking about Savannah High
just got back in.
being an administrative complex temporarily.
Were you not? Okay, so, well, I'm going to go ahead. I like this idea. I also want to state that we have got to have the 208 discussion, and we have got, as a board, we have got to vote on whether we will sell 208 Bull Street or not. We have danced around this. We have pushed this can down the road for, from what I hear, 13 years. I love this idea. I can't see, I can't justify spending the money on doing this, then spending the 80 or so million dollars to renovate 208 Bull Street. So, but that is a discussion for another day. But I do want us to understand that we need to have that discussion and that vote very soon. Yes, Ms. Hall.
Now, it's my understanding that the work needed at Savannah High, going back to the slide, the original slide, is for our students, that regardless of any central office staff came in there or not, there are needs
Yeah, we have to do the
that have to happen
17.2.
there. Oh, okay, the HVAC and the electrical system and that kind of thing, that regardless of any long-term prospects of that. So when we say we don't need to spend the money, I don't know, then that might mean, Dr. Watts, that you would have to delineate how much of this 17 million
Well,
is for
the 17.2 million is just for these
just
things.
for the school.
If you include the incorporation of the instructional support and administrative services building, it would be significantly more. And I don't know off the top of my head what that is, but it is more. The 17.2 is what it's going to be,
Okay.
just if
For
we just do the
student-based.
very basic things.
Okay.
But if we're looking at putting more of a robust structure around it and doing the administrative services building, it's going to be more.
Now, what about the movement of early college high to Savannah State or
We've got to explore
that
that.
also would be?
But luckily, we have a former Savannah State employee that is with us on our team and on our board, so we feel like we've got enough to help usher that across the finish line, should we need to.
Question. So have we decided if we're moving it on a college campus that it would be Savannah State?
We have not decided
Okay,
anything.
all right, thank you.
So it might be Georgia Southern at Armstrong.
Yes.
Savannah Tech.
Yeah.
That's why Savannah State, because that's where they currently
Okay.
are. That's the partnership now.
Okay.
And we estimated the district office at Savannah High in total at $65 million.
Thank you. Mr. Kachmar, you have a comment, go ahead.
That's more than building a brand-new building.
That includes programming and building out a boardroom and all kinds of,
Yeah, it's a very robust, it would be putting new classrooms in place.
Okay,
It
so
would
it's not
be-
just admin, it's
Yes,
it's
we
the
are
broader
looking to emulate.
innovation and technology.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay, thank
You're
you.
looking to bolster program.
I gotcha.
It's a bigger,
The headline is not 65 million for new administrative building
no,
only.
that is not the headline.
Yes.
Thank you.
It is to update the programs, it's to bolster the entire profile of that campus.
Right.
All right, and now we're moving on to the islands. They are last but certainly not least, so we're going to discuss Oatland Island renovation and middle school extension. So we're going to talk briefly about the pathway programming. So as you can see, from May Howard and Marsh Point on up through Coastal Middle School and Islands, there's not a clear pathway for that bioresearch or veterinarian program. Coastal Middle School does have something called the SALT program. It's a leadership-based program, but we could not clearly identify that it was related to the veterinarian or the bioresearch programs. So again, with the available seats, the Islands High Bioresearch Program had 75 available seats, and 14 of those were seated. And then the Vet Science had 80 available seats, and 40 of those were seated. I believe that is, and Mr. Butler can clarify for me, those are as of the choice program, not those that are in the island school itself. Just want to clarify that point. Coastal Middle School has 95 available seats, and 43 of those were seated. And then Marsh Point has 25, and 25 of those were seated. And they did have a wait list of 68 students. Oatland Island was constructed in 1927. It has 89 acres. They have 48,000 square feet. This is one of those properties that, due to the ongoing deferred maintenance and facility conditions, along with our other ongoing challenges, including damage from the storms, it compromises our ability to operate, and it jeopardizes our compliance with established standards and undermines our ability to continue delivering the services in that area.
So can I pause you right there? I want to be fully transparent with the community and this board. Because the word is kind of already out that we have lost our license to continue to operate Oatland Island as it exists today because of the deficits that she is mentioning. So when we had the storm, they came out and did an inspection. The storm illuminated concerns that were already underlying with deferred maintenance and facility conditions. And the agency that gives us a license to operate has currently revoked that license to operate. So we've got work to do, and I'm sharing this because there are people in the community who already know this in the immediate community. And so I felt important that the board understand that regardless if this idea flies or not, if we want to continue to operate this facility, we have got to put some investment into this property because currently it is closed.
How long has it been closed?
Since October. So we were up for reinspection in October, and due to all these matters, we had the opportunity to voluntarily make the option to pull down our certification application with, I believe it's the USDA.
Animals are being taken care of.
For
The
animal
animals
care.
are being taken care of. We can't let people
Yes.
go in and visit the animals.
Yes, the animals are absolutely being
So
taken care
Dr. Watts, where are our pre-K students?
Oh, they're still on site.
They're still on the site.
They can
Oh.
still attend on
Oh,
site.
We can't have visitors there to come and observe and interact with the animals.
Dr. Hoskins Brown?
That's disconcerting. I wish that we knew that before now. It would not make a difference. So I'm going to go on to my question about this recommendation because there's really nothing that can be done about that except to get the money in place to do the repair. That is a very small number for the age of that building. And I'm also thinking about the safety of the dock out there. Does this include any repairs to that dock?
No, ma'am, I don't believe that it includes
We
repairs
need
to
to
the dock.
inspect that dock as well,
Okay.
and all of our marine operations, which are expensive and which are part of the offerings of that facility.
Okay. Ms. Grabowski?
I echo Dr. Hoskins Brown's concerns. I wish we would have realized that information before now. I love the idea. As I mentioned to Dr. Watts, Charles Ellis already has a relationship with Oatland Island that feeds in very well with our Montessori. And I would love for us to think of Oatland, and I'm not sure, you've got it as a small middle school, which are there opportunities for us really to expand Oatland as a resource because we're talking about this kind of environmental, marine theme kind of all along our coastline of Chatham County, which I love. So to me, Oatland should be a resource that is open to all of those programs.
The reason that we decided, or the reason we moved forward with a site for coastal is that based on Georgia Department of Education, to get the funding, the amount of students you need to be a school on its own.
Okay.
So I think that long-term, if we can grow that, then maybe it could be a school completely all on its own, a K-8 or whatever we envision for it to be. We just wanted to do maybe a little pilot and see how does it.
And also, Coastal Middle School is overutilized.
Yes.
So it was to provide some relief to the
Okay.
current middle school site.
Yeah, and I think all that's fine. I would love for us to expand,
Yeah,
as
sure.
we're thinking about this, how do we expand it to other schools? And looking at these numbers too that you showed for again, these are really super, bioresearch is a super narrow lens for a high schooler to be thinking about. So I just wonder if broadening these
Yes,
programmings
we've
would-
got program work to do.
help to, okay. But in theory and in concept, I love the idea.
Question. Just out of
Yes.
curiosity, I think I know the answer to it, but I'm just asking for the sake of, for clarity. These numbers, these estimates, these are accurate, right? These have been researched because
Wait a minute, what numbers?
These estimates of the cost of the work.
I would not, I'm using the word estimate to the full intent of the word. It is an estimate. So I would not say that we know for a fact that this whole project
Right,
is
I'm
going
not
to be-
saying that we know for a fact it's going to be 10 million, but I'm saying that we have done some research to come up with that number. That's my question.
I will let Sunny speak to that.
Okay, because just as Dr. Hoskins brought up, I would hate for us to say it's 10 million. We think it's going to be about 10 million. Then once we get into it, it winds up being 20 million or 30 million to get it to where it needs to be. And I know we have some playroom and
Right.
wiggle room, but I don't want it to increase 300% between now and the end of the project.
That makes sense. Very valid.
Earlier, I answered for Rice Creek, 400 students to be added, 20 million, which we just did that Godley Station. So we are adding 200 students. So I'm pretty confident that 10 million is a good number for this.
But as we get into the planning and programming, that number absolutely could change, right? So if we go in and lend to Dr. Hoskins Brown point, those docks, that absolutely could expand upon that expense.
That's right. Great.
But we did add into the expense a contingency.
Yes.
I do remember some years ago, I don't know when it was, but the dock needed repair some years ago, and I don't think we fully replaced it. I think we fixed it. Did we fully replace it?
We had a opening ceremony like 3 or 4 years ago.
For the full dock or the?
Yeah, full dock with a little house, but to your point, some of it's floating and that needs to be inspected.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Hall?
I would certainly think that this would be one of the projects to go at the front end because it's so timely and it's danger of us,
Yes.
so, what are you saying, David?
Got some money, we got some money in the couch,
We could
Mr.
probably
Jackson?
look at fund balance. There's different ways
I was
to look
going to
at
say,
it, but what
yeah, I
we
was
don't-
going to say, oh, I'm
We
sorry.
could look at fund balance. We could do some immediate fixes now, but again, the effort here is to think, instead of just going in and doing something now, how can we think long-term, bigger picture? So yes, we could solve for this today. It won't necessarily solve for the utilization, the programming, and all the other pieces that we're trying to solve for.
Dr. Hoskins Brown?
I think with that in mind, I agree with the superintendent. Okay, yes, we could fix it, but I would like to know the ROI on how we operate it and how we fix it. Like, if it's, can it be fixed and modified in a way that's going to increase revenue, whether it's by admissions or some other service that we're offering, or are we going to fix it and run it exactly the way we did? I mean, Massey and Oakland Island have these same unique characteristics where they're valuable and they cost, but they don't bring in the revenue that supports their full operation. Not to my understanding,
Got
they
it.
don't. I don't know if is that true? Do they balance out? No, they do not balance out. Okay, so whatever the investment is, I'd like to know if we do this, what's the money going to be coming forward? Or are we going to decide it's going to always be in deficit and this is just a service that's being provided by the district and it's going to be subsidized by other things that are more lucrative for the district? Like to have this facility available for young people, for learners, we're going to not make it be standalone and subsidize it from somewhere else. I'd like to know that before we decide what we're going to spend on it, because if there's a shift to the model that can make it support itself a little bit more, that may only cost maybe $1 million, but it'll bring us in more money over time, it's worth knowing before we vote on it.
Okay. So then coastal and islands, now we're going to get on to, we've included some other pieces, the sales, the maintenance facility.
And Massey is included in here. It's not one of the ones we're talking about. She flipped through a whole bunch of other projects. Those are all in your book. We're just not talking about them today. Yes.
Can we use ESPLOST money for Massey?
I think we would probably need to consult with our legal team.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
I don't think we can.
My gut tells me probably yes, but I don't want to overthink that.
Definitely maybe.
Yes, definitely maybe.
Yeah, good answer.
Yes, well, Mr. Moss.
Before we go to charter
Yes.
school participation, I didn't see the Garrison.
It's in there.
It's in there.
So we're not going to discuss it, though?
We're just not going to discuss, because we discussed it the
Oh.
last time.
I see. I see.
Yes,
But it
yes.
is in there, yes, ma'am.
It is. I'll just quickly highlight, we have extended an invitation to our charter schools to participate. They have provided us a list of their things that they want us to consider. I've provided feedback to them, and you will see those incorporated with the dollar amounts in the next iteration of this. But they have gotten feedback, and they have, I forget the deadline, but it's in another week or so to submit their final request. All right, if you'll move on to the money, that's where we've got to.
All right, so just a good reminder of here's where a comprehensive list of the expenses, a beautiful graph for those that are not as number friendly as myself. So here is how, just a reminder of how we calculated our estimates. We went back and heard your feedback. Now we have changed our estimate from 3% to 5%. We took our actual monthly ESPLOST average over the past 12 months using September of 2023 to August of 2024. So how much money did we actually bring in during that time frame? And then we added 5% to that, annualized it, and that brings us to a total of $705 million plus $30 million for the title and ad valorem tax. So a total of $735 million is our estimate. I went over that quickly. I'm a numbers person, so I'm going to pause there, make sure I don't have any confusion.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on the 2 pages before that, 111? There was property acquisition for childcare, but I thought that was going to be the Duran Hodge transition.
There is another proposal,
Oh, there's a-
and I believe the southwest.
oh, across from Georgia
Yes,
Southern. Okay, thank you.
That is included in that.
Okay, and I have a question on property acquisitions, Georgia Tech property. This is just, these are just proposals, right?
Right,
Yes.
and that one is in your packet for West Chatham County as a proposal. We talked about it the last time.
Okay.
That's why we didn't talk about it today.
Okay.
That one had the lovely acronyms, the JOC, the SOC, the NOC, all those.
Technology, you could offer
The
some
technology
additional
and
programming.
security building. Okay? All right.
Questions about the projected revenue?
Well,
Mr. Kachmar.
so the strategy here is be cautiously optimistic in projecting the revenue, but we're going to be cautiously conservative in actually budgeting and planning projects. So we should have an expectation of spending less money than the 735 we're projecting,
Absolutely.
but we're building in some cushion for inflation and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So now, just like your personal checkbook, we can't spend more than we expect to bring in, right? So if our total revenue, the total amount of money that we expect to bring in is at $735 million, and our total expenses right now, before any charter considerations, are at $957 million, we have to reduce $222 million at a minimum, okay? So we have to cut the project list at a minimum by $222 million.
So the way we want you to think about this is we have provided you with a potential menu, a buffet. That's how Ms. Hall has been referring to it today, as a buffet of projects. We only talked about a few, but all of the projects are listed in this book. And I think I'm going to change this up a little bit because of time. Your homework assignment is to pause and reflect. Your homework assignment is to pause and reflect. So we'd like for you to take this home, and by close of business, what's fair? Sunday, end of day Sunday? You said remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. We're not doing any work on Sunday? Okay, so.
You can,
So
you can
Saturday,
early.
because you were going to have to do it today in real time. So I'm giving you some time to think. Your job is to go through the menu of items. There is a QR code somewhere in your packet. You are going to scan that with your phone, and you are going to give us your top five preferred projects. You're going to type it in the project, and then you're going to also think about what are your lowest priorities in terms of projects. So we're asking you to tell us what the 5 that you're most excited about and the 5 that you're least excited about, so that the team and I can deprioritize the ones that we see you're not excited about. I don't need to spend time working on those over the next few weeks. We can really prioritize the ones that you are excited about, and then we have to figure out the middle. Does that make sense?
If you
Cashmore.
cash at me, I will send you the QR code.
Speak to the need for clarity.
208 is glaringly missing. Well, like, you want me to pick among $1 billion worth of projects, and there's 230 million deficit on our max collections, but I don't know what the plan is for 208 financially or programmatically. And if there's a plan for 208 programmatically, that might change my thinking on some of these other.
So let
I know
me-
I'm being difficult.
No, you're not being difficult. What do I always say? I appreciate the push, and I do appreciate the push. So let me go with the push. We do not have a programmatic plan, a programmatic academic program. We do not have a programmatic or an academic programming vision for 208 Bull Street right now. And ESPLOST funding cannot be used for 208 Bull Street, and this conversation is about ESPLOST. So for me, 208 Bull Street does not need to be a part of this conversation because our attorneys have already said we can't use ESPLOST funding for 208 Bull Street.
Well played. So my next question is, can I rely on your representation that you have something in mind for 208?
I do.
That will be shared at the appropriate time before we have to vote on this?
You do. You have my commitment.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Watts, voting for 17 million for Savannah High is for the students of Savannah High, has nothing to do with any administrative turnarounds.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The 17 million is just the very basic that has to be done.
But if you like the $65 million pitch,
You
you can
got-
put that down.
In your top 5.
So for clarification, the $65 million pitch is for district offices.
Yes.
The $65 million pitch would be to bolster programming and incorporate a district office.
Okay,
It would be the whole kit.
okay. I'll have maybe some other questions offline.
Could,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, so that's one, because when we're talking about this as ESPLOST, how does that all fit into the eligible project category? And also, I'm going to squeak. Would really love for us to just give a smidge to some creative outdoor learning spaces, and I don't see this in here.
Okay.
It's not even a high dollar amount. But I would really love to see that on our list, especially if we're talking about all of this programming to bolster environmental and sense of place learning.
Absolutely. Note taken.
Well, I have a question. So is there a way to get a ballpark estimate of the value of the properties proposed for divestment? Not a guaranteed number, but a range or something? Because that, if we sell them and they offset some of the,
So what we have is what is it called?
Appraisal.
The appraisal. But that doesn't
Can you-
necessarily match what they're
yeah.
going to sell for.
Can we get like the appraisal and the tax value?
Yes, we can give you that.
Okay.
So, The other thing is, we don't have any dollar figures for what the charters requested, so how do we include that?
They are working on their final proposals. They did submit some dollar amounts, so I could go back to their dollar amounts and include those and send them to you.
Okay, all right.
I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
So if we're getting the information on the dollar amounts, will we also get information about what those dollar amounts would go, will we get a copy of
I
what
can
they're
certainly
proposed for?
send you the feedback that I've given them, yes.
Okay, because I think understanding the scope that the dollars would accompany would be important.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? Not everyone at once, but I'll accept a.
Move to adjourn.
Please submit your homework. We are on an extremely time
All in favor?
crunch.
Opposed.